Chapter 1367. Tianlan City entered a dark and gloomy period of reconstruction work. Emo Qianji was really bold. He directly recruited all the manpower that could be mobilized. Hundreds of thousands of people were working here. Orders came out of Emo Qianji's mouth like flowing water. There was no chaos at all. A group of people was in charge of demolishing and flattening the half-ruined houses. Following closely was a group of people in charge of cleaning. They picked out useful materials and piled them at one side. Following closely behind, people started to set up tents. The other four groups of people mobilized people from all directions to live in tents first. At the same time, several groups of people started to cook. At the same time, construction started in the areas that were rumbling past. All the doctors in the city were united and divided into 8 groups. They went to 8 directions to treat the injured first. Some doctors were unwilling to work for nothing. They had just raised their conditions when Emo Qianji ordered them to be beheaded. Those who did not listen to orders could do so. Those whose heads were useful could be used as a public display. Those who wanted to take advantage of the situation could do so. Their heads were useful too. No matter who they were or how high their status was, those who did not listen to orders now would be killed. Emo Qianji used an iron-blooded and ruthless method to carry out this task in a cold, calm and efficient manner. A few nearby vassal clans of the Lan clan were completely taken in by Emo Qianji. 2 clans wanted to resist. At Emo Qianji's command, the Tribulation brothers immediately took action. In the middle of the night, tens of thousands of heads were piled up like a mountain. Severe punishment is needed in troubled times. Emo Qianji said. Killing is a crime. But killing one person to save 2 is a merit. Emo Qianji said. Those who take advantage of the chaos to amass wealth, die. Those who take advantage of the chaos to rob, die. Those who do not listen to orders, die. Those who are slow to obey orders, die. Those who do not help others in need, die. Under Emo Qianji's strict orders after the chaos in Tianlan City, the order actually reached the standards of the world. There were treasures in any of the ruined places. They were either gold and silver or purple and white crystals, sparkling brightly. But absolutely no one dared to pick them up and put them in their arms. They were all quietly piled up in a certain place and were used in a unified manner. Some people cried, "This is my family's. You must give it to me." Then in the next moment a steel knife chopped down and a head fell to the ground. Lord Emo said, "Your life is not yours. In this world, there is nothing that belongs to you. I only value the rebuilt mother city." Emo Tianji said, "In the rebuilding process I only have one rule, kill. Or not the closest to human nature. But at a time like this, it is the most effective method. In a certain area if someone froze to death, the person in charge of distributing the resources was dead. If someone starved to death, the person in charge of cooking would also die. In just a few days the face of Tianlan City had changed drastically. I can let you live in heaven, as long as you are obedient. I can also send you to hell immediately as long as you don't listen to me." Emo Qianji's almost monstrous planning ability, his almost cold-blooded methods of control, and his almost mythical calculations were all in this accident. The performance was incisive and vivid. All of the remaining treasures were piled up in the square. They were not covered by anything and were just stored in the open. Amethyst, white crystal, gold, silver. Everything was piled up like a mountain. Every night there would be people stealing. Every night, countless people would be killed. That's exactly what I want to do. I want to lure out all the greedy people in this city and kill them. Emo Qianji said indifferently, "Since this is the city, 400 to 500,000 people have already died because of me. Then I don't mind doubling this number. I only want to create a paradise. Anyone who destroys it is unforgivable." Following his indifferent orders, rules were quickly implemented one by one. Everyone who had yet to recover from the previous shock naturally accepted the reality that Tianlan City had changed hands. Countless armored horses galloped out like a gust of wind. They carried Emo Qianji's letter to recruit all the affiliated clans in the Lan clan. Emo Qianji's time limit, 5 days. If any messenger did not return in 5 days, the clan he was in charge of delivering the letter to would be annihilated. Before leaving they had to pay for the medicine. If they did not return in time, the messenger would die from the poison. The entire clan would be slaughtered. 5 days later, Ao Shiyun, Xiadanxiong, Guduxing, GMO and Luo Kadi attacked repeatedly. One by one, the affiliated clans of the Lan clan were slaughtered and blood flowed for thousands of miles. Faced with such a phenomenon, Ao Shiyun had once tactfully mentioned to Emo Qianji, Killing too much is against the harmony of the heavens. Mo Tianji's reply was, if we don't kill when we should, it won't just be against the harmony of the heavens. Even if they are obedient now, I still have to observe for a period of time, let alone reject them directly. If they don't obey my orders now, even if they obey against their will, something will definitely happen in the future. They might as well turn into corpses now in this chaotic world. Mo Tianji said something when he was patrolling the city. This sentence was regarded as a treasure by countless lords for countless years to come. Even if I kill until only one person is left in this city, I want this city to operate according to my wishes. Otherwise, even if there are tens of millions of people in this city, if they don't obey my orders, it's equivalent to having none. If that's the case, there's no harm in slaughtering them. In such a chaotic place, only such a cruel and high-pressure method was the most effective. I like people who are obedient. If you are not an obedient person to begin with, I also hope that you will pretend to be obedient in my territory. Otherwise, you will die. Those who are obedient will not be rewarded. However, if anyone is disobedient and acts secretly after being reported, this person's entire family will be slaughtered. The informant can have all of this person's property as his personal property. As the strict rules were passed down, Tianlan City, no, from now on it was called Mother City. Mother City was killing people every day. In the last few days, the number of killings decreased and the order in the city became better and better. The city is a fair world. Mo Tianji said, after it is built, everyone's house is the same. They were all the same. Everyone's wealth was the same. There are no poor, no rich, no merchants, nothing at all. Whatever you want to do in the future, think of your own ways to earn more money. Think of your own ways. I don't care what methods you use. But don't give me a reason to kill. You make your own rules, I don't care. But, if I think that you are wrong, then you will die. An unreasonable way of management. A cruel way of governing. Here it was the most efficient way. Yang was a little surprised. From his point of view, Mo Tianji wanted to rule this city completely. It would take at least a year to completely change the appearance of the old buildings in such ruins. It might not even be enough. But now, under Mo Tianji's enforcement, it only took a month. Regardless of whether it was martial artists or civilians, they were all obedient. After killing so many people, no one complained or mentioned Lord Mo. There were actually such comments. Although Lord Mo likes to kill a little too much, he is still quite a good person. Quite a good person, not to mention Yang. When the other brothers heard such comments, they were all shocked. Aren't you afraid that this will drive everyone away? Yang once asked. It's hard to leave one's homeland. Faced with Yang's inquiry, Mo Tianji only answered in a low voice, for people, the land that gave birth to them and raised them. It is their roots. Most people, no matter if they are loyal or cunning, would rather die than leave this piece of land that is better than their own. Of course, there are prerequisites. As long as they don't break out of this place after they are in their 20s. That will be the case. And this place is very fair. As long as they don't break the law. As long as they are not bullied, nothing will happen. There are still people who stand up for them. Such a world in the heavenly layer is also unique. Mo Tianji said lightly, also these days I only killed people and did not make any specific living laws. But there are already people who are making laws based on every person I kill. Also, I inadvertently took a look and it is almost perfect. There are a total of 180 death sentences. Mo Tianji smiled slightly, I am very satisfied. Yang was dumbfounded, this works? But he had to admit that this was really feasible. Moreover, the people spontaneously made laws were far better than the rulers making them. Although in fact they found the laws from every person Mo Tianji killed, in the hearts of the people, such laws were indeed made by themselves. Everyone had a common understanding, how can I not abide by the laws I made myself? Now, less than half of the people had already moved into their new homes. There were tens of thousands of people who could move into their own homes tomorrow afternoon. Then half of the people were still living in tents. But there was not much time left. With the completion of one house after another, everyone would be able to move into their new homes in half a month at most. Moreover, they would receive an equal amount of property from Lord Mo, as well as food that could last them for a few months. In a few months, all kinds of shops would be opened, all kinds of businesses would be done, and all kinds of transactions would be circulated. Such a city was a huge opportunity for everyone. Everyone was at the same starting line. If you want to live better than others, you can, as long as you use your brain and work hard. In the future. Once it is stable, I will set up a school here and set up all kinds of formal city management organizations in the open space left behind. Mo Chinji's eyes shone. The cruelty now will let people who come to this city feel the warmth and safety of a mother's embrace in the future. Chuyang was deep in thought. Mo Chinji turned his head and looked at the night sky outside the window. He said softly, Chuyang, thank you for letting me be so willful here for once. Chuyang shook his head and laughed. Sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. We have plenty of time. Mo Chinji looked out of the window quietly and said, no, our time is very short and our opportunities are also very few. This place is almost done. So, the next step of the operation must be carried out immediately. We need to leave this place immediately. Only when we leave and let go will this city be preserved. If we wait for the other parties to react, then this place will be attacked by a group. Chapter 1368. Chuyang nodded and leaned against the chair lazily. However, I need to remind you. It's been almost a month since the Lan clan was destroyed. Even if the clans didn't receive the news in the first few days, they must have known by now. Mo Chinji nodded. I've already thought of this. From the 3rd day onwards, I've been preparing to guard against the nearest Zhuge clan. From the 10th day onwards, I've been preparing to guard against the other clans. However, they may have already taken action, but they didn't have any particularly obvious reaction. Mo Chinji smiled and said, since they didn't have any obvious reaction, I'll just make a bigger fuss here. Chuyang pondered and said, Chinji, you've been rebuilding Mother City until now. It can be said that it's starting to take shape. However, have you ever thought that if we leave and the other clans come knocking on our door, it'll be a catastrophe? Perhaps, the city that you've just built and spent so much effort on might turn into ruins in an instant. That's why we have to leave. Mo Chinji smiled confidently. Because the timing is really too good. Too good? Chuyang frowned and didn't quite understand. Mo Chinji laughed. Come with me. As he said, he pulled Chuyang into a tent. Chuyang went in and saw that the ground in the tent was actually a simulation map. This is the information that I've been collecting during this period of time. I bought the map from the law enforcement officers and created the distribution map of the forces in the upper 3 heavens. Mo Chinji pasted a large piece of white paper on the wall. Then he grabbed a brush. According to the topography of the ground, he quickly drew a few dots on the paper. Putting the law enforcement officers aside, this is the distribution of the clans. We're here for now. Mo Chinji picked up the brush and drew a circle at the bottom. Next to us is the Zhuge clan. For now. All the clans are gathering towards the northwest. He drew a few arrows with the brush. The heavenly passage will open at this moment. And after the passage opens, the Lan clan will be destroyed. Mo Chinji drew a few vague figures with the brush. He made the arrows clearer and then looked at Chuyang with a smile. What have you thought of? Chuyang admitted that he was extremely smart. But at this moment, however, he was somewhat unsure. The major clans are all working hard to exterminate the Li clan. And at this time we wiped out the Lan clan in one fell swoop. Mo Chinji said, the opening of the heavens was also the work of the Tribulation Sword Master. The Lan clan was destroyed. They didn't know that Tan Tan had already left. They could only think that it was our own power. That would give people the illusion that the Tribulation Sword Master and Tribulation are already very powerful. This is one of them. Secondly, Tribulation must be behind the destruction of the Lan family. Thirdly, why did Tribulation do that? Moreover, they were in such a hurry to wipe out the Lan clan. After all, the Lan clan had met with misfortune within a few days after the passageway was opened. Why is that? It's impossible for the Lan clan to offend Tribulation so badly. Therefore, there must be people here who doubt the reason why Tribulation is so impatient. Was it related to the Li family's predicament? Attack the enemy's only way out of the predicament of the Li clan? At this point, Mo Chinji drew a question mark on the white paper. Chuyang suddenly understood. However, he still had some doubts in his heart. So he quietly listened to Mo Tianji. There must be people who have thought of this. We don't need too many of them. As long as there's one of them, it'll be enough to make waves in the allied forces of the 8 super clans. Then, by extension, how important is the Li clan to Tribulation? Mo Chinji smiled and said, once this idea is born and Tribulation's strength is actually enough to wipe out the entire Lan clan, then, if you're a member of the 8 super clans, would you choose to wipe out the Li clan first or go head-on against Tribulation? Chuyang said without hesitation. Of course, I'd take advantage of the fact that Tribulation hasn't gathered to wipe out the Li clan first. It's better to break one than to injure all 10 fingers. That's right. Mo Chinji clapped and smiled. Therefore the northwest must be very lively now. As for me, after taking down the Lan clan, I immediately rebuilt the city. Although this wasn't my original intention, it gave people the illusion that Tribulation wanted to build a base in the Lan clan's territory to fight against the 8 super clans. Therefore for now they won't touch us. Chuyang nodded. When we think that the base is already very strong. That's the moment when they tie us up here? That's right. Imo-Chenji nodded. At that time they'll gather and attack us as a group. They'll destroy the base together with us. But, at that time it must be after they've wiped out the Li clan. For 100,000 years the rumor hasn't changed. That's, Tribulation as one is invincible in the world. Therefore before they get rid of Li Xiong-tu, they don't have the confidence to wipe us out. If Li Xiong-tu joins us they won't be able to eat or sleep well. Imo-Tianji's face revealed a cynical smile. Chuyang also laughed heartily. Because Li Xiong-tu, whom the law enforcement officers and the super clans had identified as one of the tribulations, wasn't a tribulation at all. Chuyang suddenly felt a little apprehensive. It was only now that he realized how terrifying Imo-Tianji's arrangement of Li Xiong-tu as a backup plan was. As it progressed step by step, the importance and terror of this backup plan became more and more obvious. As if he could tell what Chuyang was thinking, Imo-Tianji said, "As for whether Li Xiong-tu's identity would be exposed or not, I've never worried. Once such a thing is suspected, it'll only make things worse. Even if Li Xiong-tu knew the truth from the start and denied it from the start, no one would believe him. The most reassuring way would be to kill him. And as long as the Li clan has such a suspicion, they won't let anyone kill Li Xiong-tu so easily. As this situation becomes more and more intense, even if the Li clan only had a bit of suspicion at the start, they've become 100% convinced now. Similarly the other clans are the same. At the start they weren't sure, but now they're 100% sure that it's Li Xiong-tu. Therefore, their fight to the death was already destined when you gave Li Xiong-tu the medicine while he was unconscious. This isn't a ploy. This is human nature. Since they haven't immediately dealt with this newly rebuilt mother city, they won't be attacked with great fanfare in the short term. Therefore, they'll pay close attention to the movements here but won't make any big moves." Imo-Tianji smiled as if he had a card up his sleeve. Then he spoke with certainty. "And if we're to leave now, they won't dare to do anything to us. On the contrary, they don't dare to do anything to our foundation. First of all, if our foundation is destroyed we will never come back. Then, who has the confidence to catch and kill Tribulation who is elusive? Secondly, if we leave and they attack this city they'll incur our endless revenge. Although all the clans want to use this method to lure us out, none of them want to be our first target. The Lan clan is a good example." Imo-Tianji said, "Therefore we're leaving now. It's the safest. It's also the most secretive. It's more convenient for the next step." Chuyang nodded slowly. "However, if we want to leave we'll need a follow-up plan. Once we're used by others the consequences won't be good," said Chuyang. "The medicine I asked you for the other day has already been used." Imo-Tianji smiled faintly. "The strong men of the Lan clan's affiliated clans have taken one. They've all taken one. I told them that they must take the antidote once a year. Otherwise, haha, if the city isn't well managed." Chuyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "But that medicine isn't that serious." Imo-Tianji mischievously smiled. "But that poison cannot be expelled within a year. Once checked they'll be poisoned. Who dares to disobey? Human nature. In this aspect it's better to believe it than not." Imo-Tianji smiled and said, "I remember once I caught a pervert. I fed him a mud pill and told him that this medicine is called the life and death pill. He'll definitely die within a day." Then that guy wailed and begged for mercy for a day and a night. When the day was about to end he died. Moreover, he died as if he was poisoned. But only I knew that he wasn't poisoned at all. There wasn't even a trace of poison. Chuyang smiled bitterly. It seemed that only Imo-Tianji could do such a cruel experiment. Although the subject of the experiment was a pervert who committed all kinds of crimes, thinking about such a thing still sent chills down one's spine. "So they won't dare to disobey." Imo-Tianji smiled calmly. "I'm absolutely sure about this." Chuyang was speechless. Imo-Tianji made use of human nature to deal with these matters. He was simply superb at making use of it. But this time his starting point had finally changed. It had become to protect the people living here, and not purely to make use of them. Chuyang's heart was also rather comforted. "Next we have to leave this place. We have to leave openly. We have to wear our daily masks and leave through the main gate. This is equivalent to sending a message to the 8 great clans. We've left this place. Mo Tianji said, once we leave we'll immediately find a hidden place to change our appearance. Then we'll gather at the headquarters of the Zhuge clan, Tianji City. Speaking of the 3 words Tianji City, Mo Tianji's expression was a little strange. Don't tell me you want to mess with the Zhuge clan again while you're at it? Chu Yang was shocked. Mo Tianji smiled. How do we have the ability to mess with the Zhuge clan again? Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. To the Zhuge clan it's just a large-scale harassment, but we have to make them feel pressured. Let the other great clans feel the determination of tribulation. In this way their deployment can be adjusted based on such a foundation. And what I want is their deployment after the adjustment. Because that will definitely be a mistake. As long as they make a mistake, it will definitely be beneficial to us. Chapter 1369. Mo Tianji grinned and looked at Chu Yang meaningfully. You can rest assured about this. As long as you treat my sister well, I don't mind even if you order me around like an ox or a horse. Chu Yang was furious but also a little guilty. Bullshit. Am I that kind of person? Mo Tianji snorted and rolled his eyes. Don't forget that empress of yours from the lower 3 heavens. Chu Yang said angrily, I've told you about that. Mo Tianji snorted and said, anyway you can't make my sister sad. Chu Yang bared his teeth. Shut up. Mo Tianji laughed and turned to leave. When he reached the entrance of the tent, he suddenly turned back and tore down the messy map that had just been drawn on the wall and crushed it into powder. Only then did he go out. Chu Yang was impressed. This guy's meticulousness was obvious. He was actually afraid of leaking the secret by staying here and watching. Looking up he thought, if Diwu Qingru knew about this what would he do? What would he think? Everything that Mo Tianji had imagined was indeed wonderful. However, would Diwu Qingru let things go smoothly for Mo Tianji? The next day, early morning, the brothers wore their signature masks and swaggered out of Mother City. For some reason the news that they were leaving was leaked. Along the way people actually lined the streets to send them off. There were even some people who were reluctant to part and shed tears. This situation made GMO and Luo Kadi's jaws drop. This guy kills people like flies. He doesn't know right from wrong. Why do so many people still love him? GMO couldn't understand. That's right. This guy is the main culprit who destroyed their homes. Luo Kadi was also very confused. What do you know? Ao Shiyun scolded disdainfully. If we don't know then why don't you tell us? GMO and Luo Kadi shouted in dissatisfaction. Did we say something wrong? You are right. Ao Shiyun snorted and said, but you don't understand this world at all. In the past, after tens of thousands of years of development, the gap between the rich and the poor in this city is already outrageous. Even people who don't have to worry about food and clothing are also lamenting the inequality. Such ordinary people. There were more than 1 million people who would think this way. If the world went back to where everyone had the same starting point, I might not be worse than others. I can be a millionaire too. Becoming a millionaire. But in the past they had only thought about it. Now Mo Tianji had helped them realize it. Everyone has to start from scratch. You only saw the cruelty of his methods, but you didn't see the fairness he created. To the people, fairness was the most respectful and convincing thing. Moreover, he had also planned the future of the city. The people who would live here in the future would be much happier than before. He had killed many people and many of them were definitely wronged. But so what? Their lives were at stake. Compared to the happiness of the millions of people in the city, which was more important? This is something that anyone can calculate. The slaughter now. However, it could ensure that people would not easily break the law for a long time. How great would the benefits to the people be? This was a good thing that would benefit the future generations. How can we not support him? Ao Shiyun said solemnly. Maybe that is the case, but why would those rich people support him when they were deprived of their assets? GMO asked unhappily. That's why I said you are stupid. This time even Xie Danxiong couldn't help but say, poverty is a kind of power. When this power goes out of control, the rich people will always be the ones to suffer. If the money is still in the hands of the rich, then the riots of the poor people are inevitable. There have been many cases before. The rich people who were involved in the riots not only lost their money, but also the lives of their families. Mo Tianji took it away, which is equivalent to protecting their lives. Moreover, they were also very satisfied when they were given the same amount of money as the others. This is because they have more experience, more channels and more connections than the average person. Therefore they must be full of confidence in themselves. Don't you understand? Moreover, it can give them the feeling of starting over, as if they are living again. Do you understand this feeling? Xie Danxiong looked at the two of them with disdain. I don't understand. GMO and Luo Kudi shook their heads at the same time. I can't explain it to you. Xie Danxiong stared for a while. Then he sighed and turned his head. He muttered, rotten wood can't be carved. Luo Kudi suddenly chuckled. GMO, I just realized that Xie Danxiong is indeed very beautiful. Especially when he stares, his eyes are so clear and bright. No wonder he was mistaken for a rabbit. GMO nodded repeatedly. Yes, yes, yes. I was almost tempted just now. The two of them suddenly forgot what they were arguing about a moment ago. Instead they started to comment on Xie Danxiong. Xie Danxiong was so angry that his face turned black. He shouted and started to chase after them. Chu Yang smiled on the side. GMO and Luo Kadi didn't understand, but he completely understood. This was like a person who was doing something that he had longed to do all his life. When he succeeded in doing this, he would have a feeling of, the ship has arrived at the dock, and the train has arrived at the station. At this time, people would often have a feeling of having no goal in life. However, if his achievements were erased and he was made to start all over again, of course, there would be a psychological gap in a short period of time. However, as long as he adjusted, he would have a greater joy in life. There would be a kind of joy similar to cheating. Especially when what erased their achievements was an irresistible factor. Humans were able to adapt faster than any other species. The feeling of regaining something you had lost and then losing it made people feel grateful instead of resentment. Chu Yang sighed in his heart. This is also a kind of human nature. Little Nanan Yun Niancy hugged Mo Tianji's neck and refused to let him go. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Mo Tianji displayed a rare display of self-restraint as he coaxed this 3 to 4-year-old little girl for a long time. Only when the little girl's tears turned into smiles did he hand her hand over to someone he had designated. He instructed, "Take good care of her. If Nanan is a little thinner or lighter when I come back, I will break your legs." That person's face was sullen as he agreed repeatedly. He thought to himself, how can I not be attentive? You even planted poison in my body. The figures of the few people disappeared on the long road. Only then did little Nanan start to cry. Weak cries came from the wind. Mo Tianji's eyes were actually a little red. Chu Yang looked over and pretended to be shocked. Fuck, Tianji is crying. Immediately, GMO and Luo Kadi came over with great interest. Crying? Is he really crying? I thought this guy wouldn't cry, but he actually cried today. Mo Tianji's face was red. He roared, "You are the ones crying. You are all crying." He whipped his horse and galloped away. The brothers laughed and chased after him with strange voices. They whistled and spun into the air. This was GMO's masterpiece. This guy was slow to learn, but he was a self-taught weirdo. For example, whistling. He had learned from Luo Kudi twice. Now it was much clearer and louder than Luo Kudi's. Immediately after turning around a mountain, the experts of the various clans who were chasing after them realized that they had lost them. These people seemed to have evaporated into thin air and disappeared without a trace. They couldn't help but sigh, "Tribulation is awesome. After being here for so many days, I actually didn't find out what they looked like. I only know that one of them is surnamed Mo. As for the others, I don't even know their surnames." Just as they were about to return to their respective clans to pass on the message, a voice came from behind them. Suddenly, sword light flashed in front of them. Flowers bloomed and hidden weapons danced. It was Chu Yang and the others who had made a beautiful counterattack. The brothers were responsible for 2 to 3 people each. It was a clean battle of annihilation. After killing their opponents, they didn't stop at all. They didn't care about the other brothers. Each of them chose a direction and flew away without a trace. One day later, the territory of the Zhuge clan was like a calm pot of oil that had been ignited from the bottom. It began to boil and then there were flames everywhere. It was said that dozens of bandits acted at the same time and attacked 30 to 40 strongholds of the Zhuge clan. Thick smoke and fire rolled into the sky. Every place that was attacked had a wall with these shocking words written in bright red blood: "Withdraw your men." There was no beginning or end, just these few words. Moreover, the attackers came and went without a trace. Often, when you thought that the next place to be attacked would be here, it would be there. In short, every attack was unexpected, and every time you were harassed, it would be an absolute empty spot. A clan like the Zhuge clan, which was famous for its intelligence, was also in a terrible fix after suddenly encountering such shameless tactics. Send out experts? No problem. We won't face your experts head-on at all. No one knew what methods these people used to conceal their aura so well that not even the slightest bit was leaked. Even low-grade supreme martial artists couldn't find them. However, as long as the low-grade supreme martial artists of the Zhuge clan were alone, there was absolutely no chance of survival. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. The elder master of the Zhuge clan was furious. He issued a strict order and mobilized all the experts in the clan to investigate thoroughly. All the secret forces of the clan were mobilized. At the same time, they made use of the convenience of being familiar with the terrain to set up layers and layers of traps. Like an inescapable net, they enveloped the entire Tianji city. However, the strange thing was that from that moment on, nothing happened in Tianji city anymore. It was as if those people had left after causing trouble. In the short span of 10 days, the Zhuge clan's Tianji city was attacked more than 300 times and caught fire more than 200 times. Once it caught fire, there was absolutely nothing left in the place that was on fire. More than 100 martial saints were killed and 5 supreme martial artists were killed. The clan's wealth was greatly reduced. The entire Zhuge clan was furious, but there was nothing they could do. The chaos of the heavens seemed to have started from here. Moreover, everyone had a premonition that this kind of chaos had started from the Lan clan and had already spread to the Zhuge clan. Slowly, it was bound to be like a spark of fire that started a prairie fire until it burned the entire upper 3 heavens. Chapter 1370. The south was already in chaos. The Zhuge clan was on high alert. Zhuge Han and Zhuge dukes, one on the left and one on the right, each led their men and made their arrangements carefully. The elder master of the Zhuge clan was in charge of the clan, divining the heavenly secrets. 3 days later he finally had some clues. By the time he sent a message to the clan, the chaos had already subsided. Apart from a few dozen more ruins, it was as if nothing had happened. The territory of the Zhuge clan regained its peace. No one knew where that bunch of troublemakers had gone. Holding the heavenly secrets divined by the elder master, the people of the Zhuge clan all felt aggrieved. What was the use of taking it out now? The killing star comes from the south, the world is turned upside down. The people are plunged into misery and suffering for the emperor's anger. The heavenly secrets are hard to predict, the shadows cannot be seen, a false alarm, the stars look north. This was the gatha of the elder master Zhuge Zangqiong. If we had known that it was a false alarm, we wouldn't have been so jittery, but who would have thought of such a thing beforehand? However, the last sentence, the stars look north, did it mean that these people had gone to the north? And the north was in a war now. Then, was tribulation going to rescue Li Xiong too? The Zhuge clan immediately spread the news. The northwest. The big tent of the alliance command. Frowning, Diwu Qingru sat at the head of the table. It had been a month since he came here, but now Diwu Qingru more or less felt mentally and physically exhausted. Although he was the commander of the alliance army appointed by the Dharma Supreme, there were not many people here who really took him seriously. And, precisely because the Dharma Supreme appointed him, in the eyes of these arrogant supreme martial artists, he was even more of a bootlicker. Diwu Qingru felt a difference. This was different from the lower 3 heavens. The lower 3 heavens worshipped martial power. They worshipped wisdom even more. Therefore, a scholar could become a prime minister, a grand tutor or even a military advisor with his wisdom. As long as he could bring victory, even if he was a paralyzed person, he could still be admired by everyone. But here there was only martial power. And there was only individual martial power. There was only individual power. This time the alliance army of the 8 super clans was all here. Almost everyone was a supreme martial artist. Every one of them had their eyes on the top of their heads and considered everything beneath them. With such an advantage in numbers, what kind of planning was needed to deal with a merely clan? Even if you have 1,000 brilliant plans, I will only use one punch. A supreme martial artist of the Yi clan had once said something like this when Diwu Qingru had brought up the idea of outsmarting them. Outsmarting them? Wisdom is useful, no one can deny this. But that was under the condition that both sides were on equal footing. The 5th Commander-in-Chief. With all due respect, may I ask the Commander-in-Chief, a trap can kill a sovereign, but can this trap kill a supreme? A bunch of ants. They might be able to bite a green insect to death, but could a group of ants eat a living divine dragon? The so-called wisdom is nothing more than scheming and calculating. But do you think that under such circumstances, we, more than 1,000 supreme martial artists, would actually still need to plan and scheme against a merely clan? Aren't you thinking too highly of them? After he finished speaking, all the supreme martial artists in the tent clapped and laughed. Diwu Qingru felt powerless. There were more than 1,000 supreme martial artists here. The teams of the various great clans. It was indeed very majestic. In order to take revenge, the law enforcement officers had even mobilized a large number of experts. And there were 3 mid-grade supreme martial artists. It was indeed enough to deal with the Li clan. But this was the combined strength. If they were to be separated, no matter which clan came, they would definitely not be a match for the Li clan. But all of them acted as if they were the best in the world. There was absolutely no possibility of sincere cooperation. The Yi clan and the Shao clan also had some entanglements. They seemed to be ready to drag each other down at any time. And the Shao clan and the Lan clan also had grievances. The Zhuge clan had also suffered losses. The Chen clan was even more indignant. The Shi clan was waiting for an opportunity to strike. When Diwu Qingro thought of these relationships, he felt a headache coming on. And the 2 guardians that the Dharma Supreme had sent for him were only responsible for his own safety. They were not responsible for suppressing the emotions of the various great clans. Appearing in such a chaotic environment, even if Diwu Qingro had heaven-defying wisdom, he was also temporarily at his wits' end. No one would enforce the rules and regulations that he issued. Every time there was a battle and he wanted to hold a meeting before the battle, there would also be people who arrived and people who did not. What could Diwu Qingro do with such a motley crew? Diwu Qingro could only swallow his anger and slowly consolidate his strength first. Moreover, it took Diwu Qingro 2 days and 2 nights just to understand the relationship between the big clans. Then he discovered that almost every big clan had relatives. But there was also hatred between each of the big clans. Diwu Qingro could only distribute according to the intensity of the hatred. For example, if the Yi clan went to the west to carry out a mission, then even if the Shao clan did not have a mission, they would go to the east to guard and separate them. The other clans would also have to act accordingly to avoid dragging each other down. This was the first step. And then, in the few battles with the Li clan, although everyone did not listen to his command, Diwu Qingro still made a complete battle plan and assigned it to every leader. These people naturally would not follow Diwu Qingro's command. But, if they did not follow the command, they would definitely suffer losses. And then, after suffering losses, they would look at the battle plan at hand and understand that Diwu Qingro was right, and then they would have a little respect and admiration for Diwu Qingro. He actually had to use such a method of first suffering losses and then learning from it to build up his prestige. Diwu Qingro felt extremely comical. However, it was imperative to do so. And this was the only way to make them listen to him. In the past month they had fought 7 to 8 times. The Yi clan had fallen into an ambush and lost quite a number of men. The Shao clan had more than a dozen men eaten, and they had to flee back in a sorry state. The Shi clan had been trapped once and almost all of them were wiped out. The Chen clan had almost been burned alive. And then these few clans were finally convinced by Diwu Qingro. All in all, for a whole month, Diwu Qingro was training his troops. And he was training a group of bandits into a proper army. He used blood and death to train his troops. Every time. The price of every troop's obedience was the lives of dozens of supreme martial artists. Such a price of training troops was the most expensive price in the history of the heavenly layer. Diwu Qingro slowly changed from being powerless in the beginning to being a person with some authority. Yes, it was some authority, but this authority was related to his identity as the commander-in-chief. It was a complete mismatch. But Diwu Qingro did not show the slightest bit of anxiety. He knew. It was already very good to be able to achieve such results now. Every time Diwu Qingro inspected the allied troops, he always had a kind of sigh in his heart. Such a troop can go against Tribulation who is so united? As long as Tribulation's strength increases to a certain level, these supreme martial artists will be a bunch of pigs waiting to be slaughtered. Fortunately, the situation has changed now. At least. During the meeting, although the leaders were still a little slow, they could all be gathered in the end. This was progress. Now, in this big tent there was a discussion going on. To the big clans, they were discussing a major matter that was like a bolt from the blue. Diwu Qingro had been watching the discussion coldly. He felt. This time it would be his chance. What? The Lan clan has been destroyed? The 8th grade supreme martial artist Yi Xiaoyao, who led the Yi clan team, widened his eyes. Is the news true? Rumor. This is definitely a rumor. The 8th grade supreme martial artist Lan Mofeng, who led the Lan clan team, stood up and waved his arms excitedly. Even senior Lan Buhui died an unnatural death? That's impossible, right? The Shao clan team expert Xiao Jingyan said. Tribulation on the heavenly layer made such a big move? Bullshit, The current Tribulation Sword Master has only just obtained the first fragment of the Tribulation Sword, right? How can the current Tribulation have such ability? The Qin clan team expert Qin Jianlong was in disbelief. It's absolutely true. All the big clans have received such news, how can it be false? The Shi clan team expert Shi Qishu twirled his beard. The law enforcement officers have also received the same news. The voice of the law enforcement officer leading the team expert Yu Jinhai was very serious. And it was issued with the signature of the Dharma Supreme. This time, it was as good as a final decision. Even the Dharma Supreme had confirmed this news, then it was definitely not false. Lan Mafeng of the Lan clan stared blankly, his face pale. Like a deflated balloon, he sat down with a thud. Diwu Qingro frowned slightly and secretly glanced at Lan Mafeng. If the Lan clan was gone, then the Lan clan's men here would be the last of their strength. Were they rootless duckweeds now? In the big tent, everyone was in a heated discussion, their faces full of shock and doubt. But there were also benefits to such chaos. In the end, everyone had already confirmed this news. What was left was only wariness and suspicion towards Tribulation and the Tribulation Sword Master. The latest news from the Zhuge clan. An announcement came from outside. The Zhuge clan team expert Zhuge Yinfeng hurriedly shouted, "Come in." The curtain of the big tent opened and a person came in. Zhuge Yinfeng said, "Read it directly." That person said, "Yes." He took out a piece of paper and read, "The Lan clan was destroyed. Tribulation went crazy and harassed the Zhuge clan for 10 days. The Zhuge clan suffered huge losses and many experts died. At present, Tribulation has already left." The Elder Master calculated the heavenly secrets and came up with a gatha. At this point, that person was somewhat hesitant. "Read it." Other than Diwu Qingro, who kept silent, everyone else in the tent shouted in unison. "The killing star comes from the south, the world is turned upside down. The people are plunged into misery and suffering for the Emperor's anger. The heavenly secrets are hard to predict, the shadows are hard to predict, a false alarm, the stars look north. The Elder Master hereby notifies that the Tribulation Sword Master and Tribulation should have killed their way to the north." After this person finished reading, the tent fell into silence. The stars look north. In other words, the Tribulation Sword Master and his brother Tribulation were going to take part in this encirclement battle in the northwest. Everyone's eyes lit up at the same time. Chapter 1371. Seeing Lan Mafeng take a seat below Diwu Qingru, all the supreme martial artists felt that the current Lan Mafeng was a little different from the Lan Mafeng just now, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. But no one would be so naive as to think that Diwu Qingru could bribe Lan Mafeng with just a few words. They were all 8th grade supreme martial artists. How tough were their temperaments? Usually they wouldn't even blink when a mountain collapsed in front of them. Separation of life and death was also a common occurrence. How could they be bribed with just a few words? So no one thought much about it at all. But they didn't know that something like the annihilation of a clan was a heavy blow to anyone. At this time, a warm word was enough to be remembered for a lifetime. How could it compare to sending charcoal in the snow? What was more, Diwu Qingro's words made Lan Mafeng stick out his chest again in this group when he was feeling dejected. What Diwu Qingru gave him was dignity. Of course this couldn't bribe Lan Mafeng. But in the days to come, Diwu Qingru would leave a trustworthy impression in his heart. And with Diwu Qingru's ability and means, as long as he was given time and opportunity, he was completely confident that he could turn this momentary gratitude into control. Diwu Qingru waited for Lan Mafeng to sit down before he smiled and said, "Everyone, this matter now can be said to be unexpected. It can also be said to be earth-shattering and has completely disrupted our original deployment plan." Everyone nodded. This matter indeed had an earth-shattering impact. Some of them were still dizzy even now, feeling as if they were dreaming. As for the original plan, in the face of such an unexpected event, how could it still be a plan? The original plan was still under the impression that Tribulation was at most a martial saint. But now he directly annihilated the Lan clan. This incident is very big. Diwu Qingru said lightly, "Although there are strong and weak clans, since Tribulation can wipe out the Lan clan, then I believe it's not very difficult to deal with the other clans. And according to the intelligence, to deal with the Lan clan, Tribulation didn't pay a particularly heavy price. Then, to deal with other clans, even the Yi clan that ranks first, can Tribulation do it? Or he only needs to pay some price?" Diwu Qingru nodded and apologized to Yi Xiaoyao. "Elder Yi, it's an example. Don't blame me." Yi Xiaoyao's face darkened as he let out a long sigh. This is the truth. What's wrong with that? Everyone looked worried. This was what everyone was most worried about. Diwu Qingrou's words. He hit the nail on the head. It exposed everyone's deepest fears at the same time. The expression in the eyes of an old man standing behind him fluctuated slightly, but then he lowered his eyelids and remained motionless. This person. He was the only 5th-grade supreme martial artist expert of the Diwu clan. At this moment he was having a hard time holding himself back. His mind was filled with questions. Just last night when he had just received the news, Qingru also said that Tribulation couldn't do it at all with his current strength, and there must be something fishy about it. Why did he say it so confidently and alarmist now? Tribulation as one, invincible in the world. Diwu Qingrou's index finger gently rubbed the space between his eyebrows. He said solemnly, right now one of the Tribulations, Li Xiong-tu, is trapped in the northwest by us. But there is still a person there. Because there is a sword master there. Such a person might not be weaker than Tribulation unification. In fact, it should be far beyond that. Everyone nodded in agreement. Yi Xiaoyao said, this is absolutely true. If the sword master is not as strong as the original Tribulation, then this sword master is too tasteless. Xiao Jingyan said, yes, the sword master's strength should be the highest among Tribulation's strength. And he is also the core. So, it is reasonable that his combat strength is extraordinary. Everyone agreed. Diwu Qingrou's analysis. It really hit the nail on the head. The supreme martial artist expert behind Diwu Qingrou lowered his head and remained motionless, but he was more and more confused. I once remembered that Qingrou said that Li Xiong-tu was definitely not one of the Tribulations. Qingrou had never changed his opinion on this. Why was he so sure of Li Xiong-tu's status as a Tribulation now? Wasn't he indirectly doing Tribulation a great favor by misleading them like this? This was a long-term plan. It should be disadvantageous. Why did Qingrou do this? The threat is great, but they should have just rushed up to the upper 3 heavens now. They don't have any foundation here at all. But they just took action like this, and they even seemed to be in a hurry. It's kind of like they were desperate to cut off all means of retreat. Diwu Qingrou analyzed slowly. According to common sense, Tribulation should disperse immediately after coming up, hide their identities, train on their own, and build up their own strength. Then, when the time is right, they should give an order to rise up and take over the upper 3 heavens. This is the best plan. Although they have defeated the Lan clan at present, this should never have happened. Diwu Qingrou said, since such a thing has happened, then there must be a reason. Then what is the reason? Everyone asked, looking serious and anxious. Diwu Qingrou's analysis was absolutely reasonable. Just now, everyone was so shocked that they neglected this aspect. Now they realized, yes, they were so anxious to take action. It was obviously like a rabbit biting someone when it was anxious. It was too urgent. For thousands of years, the process of Tribulation unifying the world was recorded. How could they be so anxious and impatient like now? Moreover, Tribulation didn't have a strong purpose this time. That is to say, when they came up, they didn't know that they were facing the Lan clan. Diwu Qingrou tapped the table lightly with his finger. Look at the date the heavenly passage opened. Within 3 days the Lan clan was destroyed. But if they came up from other passages, they wouldn't be able to reach the Lan clan in 3 days. That is to say, Tribulation came up from the passage guarded by the Lan clan. After coming up, they took action without hesitation. This shows that they couldn't wait. Since they were so anxious, it means that the big clans did something that they couldn't tolerate and couldn't wait any longer. So they were anxious. Diwu Qingrou finished speaking in one breath and took a long breath. After Tribulation destroyed the Lan clan, he still put on a calm and composed look and built a new city in the Lan clan. Why is that? The construction of a new city is complicated. How can it be completed in a short time? If they really wanted to build a base, it would be impossible without a few years of operation. But they only stayed for less than a month and left. After they left, they immediately attacked the Zhuge clan. Why is that so? Tribulation should be self-aware. That is, now that they have no foundation, we will never allow them to build a base on such a large scale. You definitely can't build it either. But they still did it. What? After attacking the Zhuge clan, they immediately went north. The stars were looking north. This time their goal was clear. But why? Diwu Qingrou kept asking why. The 3 consecutive whys were like 3 thunderbolts that struck everyone's heads. Yes, why is that so? Could it be the situation in the northwest? Yi Xiaoyao reacted the fastest. Could it be that the Lan clan, just by chance, became a test subject? Or a scapegoat? Lan Mofeng took a deep breath. Should be. Diwu Qingru gave Yi Xiaoyao and Lan Mofeng each a smile of approval. He said, let me explain. They attacked the Lan clan blindly without any regard for the consequences because they wanted to reduce the pressure on this side. But it was this kind of panicked action that unintentionally helped us completely confirm that Li Xiongtu was one of tribulation. They caused such a big commotion only because they wanted to save their own brother. They first created a big change to make us panic. This is equivalent to openly challenging us. Then they built a new city to give us a target and lure us to go and destroy them. This is luring the snake out of its hole and luring the tiger away from the mountain. And their subsequent moves will definitely be endless. Therefore, I dare to guarantee that if we really sent people over at that time, the Li clan's crisis would be resolved very soon if they launched their subsequent moves under the circumstances where the situation in the continent would affect the situation as a whole. And the people who went over would not even discover tribulation's shadow except for gaining a ruined city. In this way, one in the south and one in the north would be free at the same time. Tribulation would be like a dragon returning to the sea and entering the deep mountains, disappearing without a trace. Everyone gasped at the same time. If such a situation really happened, it would really be a complete loss with nothing to show for it. There was sincere respect on Diwu Qingrou's face. It's all thanks to the elder masters of the super clans who saw through Tribulation's plan and did not make a move. This made Tribulation's first plan fail. Here, Qingru expresses my admiration to the elder masters. Diwu Qingru said sincerely, amazing. All the supreme martial artists who led the team breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. There was pride in their eyes. Tribulation's first plan did not work, so he came up with another plan, which is to attack the Zhuge clan again regardless of the consequences. He wants to use this method to attract the attention of the super clans again. But, take note, there's something very important here. Very important. Diwu Qingrou's tone was heavy and even somewhat sinister. Everyone was shocked at the same time and held their breaths. At this point, Diwu Qingru completely controlled the atmosphere. At this point, it could already be said that Diwu Qingru completely controlled the initiative. If he said that he wanted this group of supreme martial artists to breathe, they would breathe. If he said that this group of supreme martial artists was not allowed to breathe, then everyone could only keep holding their breaths. It looked like it was caused by the topic and controlled everyone's emotions with the serious situation. But in fact, it was Diwu Qingrou's leadership authority that was further established by the people's hearts. The most important thing was that as long as it was acknowledged, then the next step would be easy. Chapter 1372. Diwu Qingrou's serious tone suppressed everyone's emotions to the extreme. A very important place? What place? Yi Xiaoyao racked his brains. How is it important? Is it enough to affect the battle situation? Xiao Jingyan gasped. I didn't realize it. Up to this point, although it didn't succeed, it has been under the control of tribulation. Qin Jianlong closed his eyes and raised his head to ponder. Everyone else was also racking their brains. After thinking for a while, they still couldn't figure it out. Finally, they gave up and asked, Commander-in-Chief Diwu, what is so important? That is, Tribulation attacked the Lan clan and has been seriously injured. This is the most important point. Diwu Qingrou's words made everyone a little puzzled. Tribulation was seriously injured? Was there any sign in the intelligence that Tribulation was seriously injured? Without waiting for everyone's questioning gaze, he quickly continued. The Zhuge clan and the Lan clan are similar in strength. If they can attack the Lan clan, they can definitely take down the Zhuge clan too. If you are Tribulation, let me ask you, is the deterrent of destroying a clan? Or is it the deterrent of destroying two clans in a row? Would you let go of such an opportunity? Everyone couldn't help but nod. This sentence was right. But, the fact is, although the Zhuge clan has lost a lot of property, the main body is still intact. What? They are a group of butchers. It's impossible for them to kill the entire Lan clan and be so merciful to the Zhuge clan, right? The only explanation is, after they attacked the Lan clan, they paid a very heavy price. It was so heavy that they almost couldn't bear it. Diwu Qingrou's eyes emitted a cold light and he slammed the table heavily. Bang! Everyone was shocked by this slap on the table. They couldn't help but shudder at the same time. All the supreme martial artists were happy to surrender at this moment. Diwu Qingrou's analysis was as if they had seen it with their own eyes. It was reasonable. To agree with any change, this was really a godlike analysis. At least, the few of us couldn't do it. From this point we can conclude that with Tribulation's current strength, if he goes crazy he can destroy a clan, but he is far from being as powerful as we think. This is the first point. Everyone must remember this conclusion. Diwu Qingru said slowly, everyone digest this conclusion first. Then I'll come to the second conclusion. Everyone let out a sigh of relief, and for a moment, their expressions relaxed. Yes, we have indeed overestimated the strength of the enemy and the severity of the situation. That's right. They were not scary. In addition, there is another possibility. That is, Tribulation might have external help in destroying the Lan family this time. As for what the external help is, we don't know. At the moment, this is only a conjecture. It's good that everyone knows. Everyone was convinced. He nodded repeatedly. Who said that wisdom was useless? This was the use of wisdom. Even if you were invincible in martial arts, you might not be able to analyze this kind of analysis. Diwu Qingru was silent for a while. Then he said, the next part involves the situation in the northwest. The Li clan was already on the verge of collapse. But Tribulation's impatience also tells us the importance of the Li family. They would rather pay such a heavy price to do this. We have already talked about this before. Let me add a conclusion here. That is, Li Xiong too is a relatively important part of Tribulation. Everyone's spirit was shaken, and their eyes were shining. And the Li family. If our estimation is right, then the Li family must be Tribulation's real base in the upper three heavens. In other words, our encirclement this time. We hit them where it hurts the most. Diwu Qingru tapped on the table with his fingers, and then he fell into deep thought. He slowed down the speed of his speech. So this battle will follow, ha. Diwu Qingru laughed softly and said, if I say that it concerns the life and death of your clans, will you think that I am exaggerating? Everyone shook their heads vigorously. What a joke, who dared to deny it? Tribulation had gone crazy. Tribulation with one less person had wiped out the Lan family. If there was a mistake here, and Li Xiong too was also let go, then it would really be the end of the big clans. Everyone had a feeling in their hearts. In the future we can't be careless anymore. We must strictly follow the orders of Commander-in-Chief Diwu. At present, the northwest is already heavily guarded, but Tribulation still comes. And they don't have their own strength. Diwu Qingru's voice was deep. At present, with our strength, even if Tribulation comes, he definitely has no ability to fight us head-on. Everyone nodded. So, after they come, what they are going to do should be. Diwu Qingru's eyes shot out a sharp light. Behead. Behead. Everyone shuddered in fear. Yes, under such circumstances Tribulation could only use this tactic. If the supreme martial artists of the 8 big clans were besieged and beheaded, and 1 or 2 or even more died, then it would inevitably cause chaos. As long as there was chaos, Tribulation Swordmaster and the others would have an opportunity. To put it bluntly, please don't be offended. Diwu Qingru smiled faintly. If the relationship between us is still as chaotic as it was in the past month, and everyone acts on their own and doesn't listen to orders, they don't even need to behead the leaders, and they can let Li Xiong too escape. Yi Xiaoyao, Xiao Jingyan and the others instantly blushed. Their thousands of years old faces suddenly turned into monkey buttocks. At this moment, with such a crucial sentence, Diwu Qingru finally and completely established his absolute leadership position in the coalition forces. From this sentence, Diwu Qingru believed that every word he said would be taken seriously. This was the result of his 1 month's planning. In terms of beheading, Tribulation comes and goes without a trace, and it's impossible to guard against it. And the person they should kill the most should be, Shi Qishu thought for a while and his face turned pale. He suddenly looked up at Diwu Qingru. Commander-in-Chief Diwu? Yi Xiaoyao's face changed. Yes, as long as they kill Commander-in-Chief Diwu. There's no need to sow discord and we'll fall back into the situation where we fight for ourselves again. With this reminder, everyone thought of it. Xiao Jingyan said, in this case, the guards of Commander-in-Chief Diwu must be strengthened. Yes, that's right. After a discussion, each big clan spontaneously handed over a team of elites to be responsible for Diwu Qingru's safety. The thing that Diwu Qingru wanted to do the most, the power that he wanted to get the most, actually happened under such circumstances. He didn't even say a word about this matter at all, and it was just a matter of course. Diwu Qingru didn't pretend to be pretentious, but thanked everyone graciously. He turned to Lan Mofeng and said, Senior Lan, you have to pay special attention. If the other party takes action, you will be the first target. And your side also has the greatest possibility of chaos. He stopped abruptly in the middle of his words. But everyone understood what he meant. Lan Mofeng said gratefully, "Commander-in-Chief, don't worry. These old bones of mine can still play with them for a while." Diwu Qingro frowned. He said gently, "Elder Lan, please change your station with the Shi clan and come to my side. How about you protect my safety?" There was gratitude in Lan Mofeng's eyes. Diwu Qingro was safe now, and he didn't have to worry about anything at all. But such a change would put the remaining power of the Lan clan in the safest position. But he also said, "Protect me?" This was also greatly taking Lan Mofeng's face into consideration. And such a decision. The other clans, including the Shi clan that was changed, couldn't say anything. They could only agree. Now the Lan clan was placed outside. It was indeed the most dangerous time bomb. Who knew how much chaos it would cause after it was detonated? Only by putting it next to Diwu Qingro, the most resourceful person, would it be the safest. After the analysis of the situation was completed, Diwu Qingro also truly became the most powerful person in the alliance. The following arrangements. Diwu Qingro's expression didn't change at all from before. He was still modest, steady, and open-minded. But after everyone heard this, they changed from their previous relaxed attitude. One by one they straightened their backs, widened their eyes, and pricked up their ears. The battle against the Li clan. It must be done quickly. Capture and kill Li Xiongtu as soon as possible to eliminate future troubles. Diwu Qingro said slowly, "If this can be done before the tribulation arrives, it will be best. If it can't be done by then, all the more you need to be careful." Diwu Qingro finished. In the big tent, everyone didn't leave for a long time. Only after a long time did they walk out with solemn and worried faces. In Diwu Qingro's personal tent. "Qingru, are you really going to?" The Diwu clan expert sent a telepathic message carefully. A mysterious smile appeared on Diwu Qingro's face. He sent a telepathic message and said, "The longer the battle against the Li clan drags on, the better. The longer it drags on, the more stable my position will be. The power of the Diwu clan will be formed after this siege. The power of the clan will be formed." The supreme martial artist Diwu Chong trembled all over. Since the decline of the Diwu clan 10,000 years ago, the matter of the formation of power had become an eternal pain. They were attached to the Zhuge clan. Once they had a little bit of power, they would be immediately divided, absorbed, or sacrificed by the Zhuge clan. And the Diwu clan could only endure and endure. Diwu Qingro actually had such confidence today? Diwu Qingro raised his head and sighed softly. It's already impossible to become a tribulation. But we have to use the tribulation's pressure on the big clans bit by bit to establish our power bit by bit, and then get out of the Zhuge clan's range. To become a new force. This siege in the northwest is a sign of tribulation's outstanding talent, but isn't it also a new one for the Diwu clan? Diwu Qingro smiled slightly. The luck of the big clans has been ruined, but we have the blood luck of the last dynasty change in the lower three heavens. This is our opportunity. Racking my brains, and G. Chapter 1373. On the second day, Diwu Qingru immediately adjusted the strategic deployment. All the members of the allied forces began to head toward the Li clan's base. He also gave a death order, wipe out all obstacles along the way. This order clearly showed the determination of not giving up until the Li clan was eradicated. All the members of the allied forces were invigorated. Diwu Qingru said something that made everyone extremely excited. "This time, our base camp will be stationed 1,500 kilometers away from here." 1,500 kilometers away, that was basically the core area of the Li clan. What was the difference between this and destroying the Li clan? At his command, 2,000 to 3,000 people set up camp and charged in majestically. The Li clan was in an extremely bad shape right now. Building the clan and cleaning up the ruins had wasted too much time. Moreover, the spirit of the Li clan also seemed to have disappeared along with the collapse of the clan. Everyone was somewhat lifeless, filled with sorrow and despair. During this period of time, they had been encircling and suppressing Lang Yilong and the others. But as they encircled and suppressed them, the other party had all disappeared as if they had collectively melted. That area had already been turned over by the Li clan for tens of thousands of feet, but they still couldn't find any trace of them. All in all, this matter had happened in such a strange and incomprehensible way. The Li clan was furious, but there was nothing they could do. The people at the periphery obviously didn't discover anything and swore that the enemy was definitely still in the northwest area. They definitely hadn't escaped. Alright then, they continued to search. But then people from the various clans came. So be it. It wasn't like they hadn't come before. They were just here to harass and test the waters. That was all. Now that the Li clan was in troubled times, they couldn't let them come in and cause trouble. Thus they sealed off the area. But with this seal, something big suddenly happened. The Li clan clearly didn't issue any orders against the few clans outside, but there were inexplicable casualties in the few clans. And those who died were all important figures. Furthermore, the spearhead was clearly pointed at the Li clan. The Li clan was extremely wronged. At such a sensitive time, we couldn't wait to avoid you. Why would we do something like digging our own graves? However, before he could explain, a blood-red warning line appeared. With this, the few clans outside went berserk and began to charge in, seeking an explanation. When they saw the Li clan, they didn't care whether they could explain. It was a frenzied killing spree. The Li clan was forced to retaliate, but this retaliation only made the situation worse. The situation was getting worse and worse. Then the Li clan was forced to retract their defensive line by several hundred miles. After a few days of rest, do your best to search for Chu Yang and the others. And then, the Li clan realized that the sky was falling and the earth was caving in. The various great clans had actually sent out secret troops, all of them supreme beings. They drove over in a grandiose manner, and after they drove over, they started the war without stopping. Then the law enforcement officers also came. The Li family finally realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late. The moment the few people from the law enforcement interrogation hall showed up, the Li clan knew that it was over. Motherfucker, he was still searching for her in his own house, but it turned out that she had already left. Moreover, he had even called for reinforcements. An encirclement and suppression was launched. Because of this matter, the clan leader of the Li clan, Li Wubua, flew into a rage. He scolded the few supreme martial artists who were in charge of the pursuit, regardless of their seniority. Are you all pigs? He had left long ago, but you guys are still here. This is really infuriating. Although he was infuriated, the situation of life and death that the clan was facing was extremely urgent. With more than 1,000 supreme martial artists outside, the Li clan was already in a precarious situation. Explaining would be of no help at all. After Xiao Jingyan of the Xiao clan arrived, he did raise a condition, but this condition was unacceptable to everyone in the Li clan. Hand over Li Xiongtu, and all the martial emperors and above in the Li clan will cripple their own cultivation, and we can let the Li clan off. Upon hearing this condition, the Li clan members, they had already cursed Xiao Jingyan and his ancestors. This was still considered letting them off? If they really did that, the Li clan would be completely done for. There was no need to consider at all, becoming a ghost under the knife. Following the arrival of the commander of the Allied forces, the Li clan's situation was getting more and more difficult. The external forces were being nibbled away bit by bit. The Li clan finally learned from this painful experience, no longer tolerating it, and started to retaliate. Relying on their familiarity with the terrain, they started a series of battles with the other great clans. All along, the other party had been attacking with a motley crew, which actually allowed the Li clan to attack and defend, and they even gained quite a bit of advantage. However, the Li clan's losses were equally great. Dozens of martial saints were lost, and 4 to 5 supreme martial artists were also reduced. Most of the external subsidiary clans had completely fallen. But after all, the situation had been stabilized for the time being. Li Wubua knew that this was just the beginning. The bigger picture would only appear after this. Therefore, during this period of time, the Li clan was fully prepared for war and they were on high alert. Seeing the Li clan preparing for war in full swing, everyone's expression was heavy, and their footsteps were hurried. As a battle-hungry member of the Li clan, Li Xiongtu naturally wanted to participate. However, everyone stopped him from participating in the battle. As long as they saw him walking out, the 4 supreme martial artists at the door would drag him back, refusing to let him go out no matter what. What kind of joke was this? The 8 super clans were here for you. As long as you went out, you would definitely be torn into pieces in an instant. In that case, all the sacrifices and perseverance of the Li clan would become meaningless. Li Xiongtu was extremely depressed. Warriors were born to fight. How could they be called warriors if they couldn't fight? How could they improve their strength? Just as he was feeling depressed, 2 people came to visit him one after another that night. 2 important figures to the Li clan. The first to come was Li Wubua, the clan leader of the Li clan. Xiongtu, what level is your cultivation at now? Li Wubua didn't come alone. There were 5 of them. Among them were the Grand Duke of the Li clan, Li Ju, and the Second Duke, Li Badian, who had brought Li Xiongtu into the upper three heavens. There were also 3 core supreme martial artist experts accompanying them. At present, I have barely broken through to first-grade supreme martial artist. Li Xiongtu took a breath and said respectfully, also the hidden illness in my body has disappeared. A hint of admiration appeared in Li Wubua's eyes. As expected of one of the tribulations. This future of his was really admirable. In that case, you will be able to continue walking on the path to the peak of martial arts? Li Xiongtu said cautiously, if there are no accidents. I think so. Li Wubua finally smiled in contentment. Xiongtu, I've received news. Ever since the Li clan was besieged, our reinforcements have finally appeared. A hint of excitement appeared in Li Wubua's sinister eyes. He looked into Li Xiongtu's eyes and said, the Lan clan of the 8 super clans was completely uprooted a month ago. Everyone in the Lan clan was killed. The elder master of the Lan clan, Lan Buhui. He also died an unnatural death in this battle. Li Xiongtu was shocked. Do you know who did it? Li Wubua said, you should be able to guess. Li Xiongtu frowned and pondered. A month ago. Coincidentally, it was the day when the heavenly passageway opened, right? Could it be that the Lan clan was besieged by the Tribulation Sword Master? It wasn't surprising that Li Xiongtu could come up with such a conjecture. In the upper 3 heavens, the super clans didn't have any enemies at all. They did. There was only one, and that was the Tribulation Sword Master who had only appeared in recent years. And a month ago was the day when the heavenly passageway opened. It was reasonable for Li Xiongtu to come up with such a conjecture. Even if it wasn't Li Xiongtu, anyone else could only come up with such a conjecture. Even an idiot would be able to figure it out. However, when these words came out of Li Xiongtu's mouth and out of other people's mouths, it gave Li Wubua and the Li clan members present a completely different feeling. A mysterious and gratified smile appeared on Li Wubua's face. He nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. So you do know. The expressions of the others, such as Li Ju and Li Badian, also became ambiguous at the same time. So you do know, and so you guessed it, were completely different. So you guessed it was a coincidence, but so you do know was a certainty. Li Xiongtu must have known long ago. The pitiful Li Xiongtu was just a battle maniac. How could he have so many thoughts? He didn't think much about this at all. Xiongtu. Li Wubua's expression became more and more amiable. In your opinion, what will be the final outcome of the 8 super clans and the law enforcement officers besieging the Li clan this time? Li Xiongtu's expression was somewhat impassioned. He said angrily, the 8 super clans have gone against the grain. They will pay the price. Li Wubua's face actually flushed red with agitation because of this sentence. Because he heard it. It definitely wasn't just Li Xiongtu's words out of anger. It was the promise of tribulation and the Tribulation Sword Master. At this moment, Li Xiongtu. He could totally speak on behalf of tribulation. What he said now must be the decision of the Tribulation Sword Master and his brothers. Without a doubt. The 8 super clans would pay the price. And the first price had already been paid, the Lan clan. For a moment, the Li clan leader was even a little smug. How is it? Going against us? Going against tribulation? Haven't you heard that the Tribulation Sword Master is invincible? Then Xiongtu, guess why the Tribulation Sword Master attacked the Lan clan? Li Wubua sighed happily. This I really can't guess. Li Xiongtu hesitated for a moment. Well, it's okay, Li Wubua smiled. Then guess. Will the Tribulation Sword Master be interested in the encirclement in the northwest and come to interfere? Li Xiongtu said with uncertainty. Since they have dealt with the Lan clan, they have become enemies with the 8 super clans. And the northwest is where the battle is at now. If there are no accidents, the Tribulation Sword Master will definitely come. It was obvious that he was a louse on a bald head. However, Li Wubua clapped his hands fiercely. His eyes shone brightly as he shouted, Good. The Tribulation Sword Master will definitely come. That's great. Then the Li clan will defend with all our might, all the way until the Lord Tribulation Sword Master arrives. Everyone agreed in unison. Only Li Xiongtu's boorish heart was a little puzzled. Why did the clan leader call him Lord Tribulation Sword Master? Lord, was there a need to be so respectful? And, even if the Tribulation Sword Master came, he might not help the Li clan. What are you all so excited about? Something big happened last night. It's not convenient for me to talk about it in detail. I can only say one thing. Women are scary. Women are not to be trifled with. I almost lost my life. And the impact of this incident is still ongoing today. I'm too fucking tragic. I wanted to cry but had no tears. Chapter 1374. Li Wubo was very happy. He was so happy that he had a long talk with Li Xiongtu. He talked about the world's situation, gave pointers to the world's heroes and commented on them. Finally he said something disheartening. Xiongtu, Li Ju, Badian, the three of you must remember my words. What words? What if? I'm saying what if. Of course before that we will try our best to fight for the best result. But if the Li clan can't hold on before the Tribulation Sword Master comes, then, the three of you take your women and support each other. Don't care about anything else. Run for your lives as soon as possible. Li Wubo's hawk-like sinister eyes revealed a hint of fear. He was silent for a long time before he said, if the Li clan is really finished, all of you need to preserve the Li clan's descendants. When that time comes, all of you must remember that your escape is not the escape of cowards, but the responsibility of the bravest. The three of them looked at Li Wubo in a daze. They didn't expect the clan leader to say something like this at a time like this. When that time comes all of us won't blame you. Moreover, all of us will do our best to cover your escape. Li Wubo said gloomily, of course I'm only saying what if. The three of them were dumbfounded. Li Wubo, who had always been cold and ruthless, actually said something like this. Even his own sons, Li Ju and Li Badian, were somewhat stunned and couldn't accept it. Of course those what-ifs may not necessarily happen. Li Wubo smiled comfortingly and stood up. Then he walked out. Li Ju, Li Badian and Li Xiongtu exchanged complicated glances and followed Li Wubo out. Only Li Xiongtu was left. Li Xiongtu's heart was in turmoil. The clan had actually made such a choice. If there was a final juncture to cover his escape with all their might. Li Xiongtu came to the upper three heavens like a stray dog, but received such an honor. What did I do to deserve it? Was I worthy of such treatment? After sending Li Ju and Li Badian away, Li Wubo and the three supreme martial artists walked on the spacious road. The night was foggy and the winter chill was chilly. Have the families of the various affiliated clans been arranged? Li Wubo asked after a long while. Yes. Everything has been arranged properly. An elder said, they've all gathered around the one-line heavens. It's easy to defend and hard to attack. It's absolutely safe. That's not what I'm asking. Li Wubo shook his head gently. What if the family really can't hold on until the turn of events? Then our Li clan will have to sacrifice all our lives for the future. With the most heroic sacrifice, we will win the glorious future of our descendants. Li Wubo said solemnly, all of you must be prepared for this. It's not like we can't abandon our lives. Yes. Heroic expressions flashed across the faces of the three elders. The elder master is very disappointed in us now. Moreover, he has already developed a mentality of despair. In his opinion, the end of the Li family is near. They had arrived. And it's irreversible. Li Wubo let out a bitter laugh and said, the elder master single-handedly established the clan. Yet when it came to my generation it was destroyed in my hands. The three supreme being elders were speechless. At the same time he sighed, don't worry about it, family head. Victory and defeat are decided by the heavens. We can only do our best. Doing our best won't do. Li Wubo said dispassionately, even though the destruction of the Li clan is already inevitable, I still want to preserve the future of the Li clan. And this will require the efforts of the big affiliated clans. The efforts of the big affiliated clans. The three supreme elders thought of something at the same time. Cold sweat suddenly broke out on their backs. Yes. The big affiliated clans, the participants of the battle and all their family members. They have already split up, right? Li Wubo asked calmly. They have already split up. Are there enough family members for 100,000 people? Li Wubo was obviously more concerned about this issue. Including the guards and so on. All the family members should be around 200,000 people. At present they are all under our protection. Under our protection? A cruel smile appeared in Li Wubo's eyes. He nodded and said, yes, that's good. At the critical moment, the experts of the affiliated clans who should be sacrificed must be sacrificed first. At present, there have already been quite a number of betrayals from the affiliated clans. These people are unreliable, Li Wubo said solemnly. Yes. Also, prepare the blood-colored passageway and the demonic heart array diagram. Li Wubo took a deep breath. After hesitating for a moment he finally said, at the critical moment, the heads of 100,000 people will fill the sky and the hearts of 100,000 people will open a path for Li Xiongtu, Li Ju, Li Badian and the rest to leave this place. The three elders shuddered violently at the same time. Looks of disbelief shone in their eyes. Heaven's net evading demon. The cold light in Li Wubu's eyes was like a ghostly fire in a graveyard in the middle of the night. The three elders nodded solemnly. The heaven's net evading demon was a peculiar secret technique. When the Li clan discovered the super purple crystal mine, they found a peculiar parchment in the periphery of the purple crystal mine. This secret technique was recorded on the parchment. With the innocent people, 10,000 virgin boys, 10,000 virgin girls, 10,000 women and children, 10,000 old and young as the main force and 10,000 others as the auxiliary force, behead them and turn them into mountains of white bones. Fill the sky with resentment and break the heaven's net. Take their hearts and turn them into a path for vengeful souls so that we, the extraterrestrial demons, can be free and unfettered. This was heaven's net evading demon. It was an extremely cruel escape method that originated from the extraterrestrial demons. As the name implied, it was to kill 100,000 innocent people when they were covered by the heaven's net and had nowhere to go and were facing certain death. Then use the resentment gathered from the heads of the 100,000 innocent people to break through the heaven's net. Use the hearts of the 100,000 innocent people to pave a path to escape from the disaster. Furthermore, among these 100,000 people, the number of children, adult women, and the elderly had to reach 10,000 each. This was the most basic condition. After this condition was fulfilled, it didn't matter even if others repeated it. Such a method was inhumane to the extreme. Ever since the Li clan obtained it, they had never used it. However, they had long prepared the formation. Obviously, it was a precaution. The moment the formation was set up, the elder master of the Li clan, Li Chuanbua, had appeared immediately. He destroyed the entire formation, and strictly forbade them from doing such things again. At that time, Li Chuanbua had once said bitterly, "From the moment this formation was revealed to the world, the moment the Li clan's people harbored such thoughts, it had already determined the Li clan's demise. If they didn't repent in time, the Li clan wouldn't necessarily be annihilated." Ever since then, the Li clan had been peaceful for a few thousand years and didn't harbor such thoughts. However, when it came to Li Wubu's generation, Li Wubu felt that the Tribulation Sword Master was about to be born and that the great clan was in imminent danger. Therefore, he secretly set up this formation in the one-line sky, far away from the Li clan. There weren't many people who knew about this. Only Li Wubu's trusted aides knew a little about it. Now, Li Wubu was obviously going to put this plan that he had prepared in advance into action. In another direction, Li Ju and Li Badian held a thin piece of paper in their hands and watched it turn into nothingness. The brothers' expressions were somewhat complicated. Inside was Li Wubu's secret arrangement. Only the two of them knew about this arrangement. If the Li clan is around, abandon this plan. If they aren't, leave with Li Xiongtu. Once they come into contact with the tribulation, find an opportunity to do so and so. If it doesn't work, destroy the formation and replace it. You must keep this a secret. This was Li Wubu's real plan. If it really came to that, the Li clan had already sacrificed the entire clan for you, the Tribulation Sword Master. You can't just ignore this, right? If something happened to Li Xiongtu, what other choice do you have other than choosing between Li Ju and Li Badian to be the Tribulation Sword Master? Even if it's purely to repay the Li clan's contributions. For the sake of these hundreds of thousands of lives, you should also make up for it. Otherwise, you, the Tribulation Sword Master, would also be going against the Heavenly Tao. Which one is more important? You should know very well. After all, the Li clan is the Tribulation clan that you have decided on long ago. This kind of thing isn't easy to change. Li Xiongtu sat in his room. He was deep in thought, thinking about the Li clan's current situation and trying to find a way out for the Li clan in this precarious time. However, he wasn't someone who was good at planning at all. In terms of fighting and killing, Li Xiongtu wasn't weaker than anyone else. However, when it came to scheming, he was at his wit's end. Meng Huanhuan sat behind him obediently. Her eyes were full of tenderness as she looked at Li Xiongtu. No matter what happened in the future, at least the present was already happiness. I've already gotten it. Li Xiongtu finally gave up. He let out a long sigh and said indifferently, I can't think of a way. However, it's just a battle. His straightforward and domineering style had destined him to be a natural-born warrior. He wasn't a wise man. At the moment when he gave up on thinking, he actually felt relaxed all over. It's just a battle, no. You need to fight forever. A voice sounded softly. Li Xiongtu turned around and couldn't help but be shocked. Elder Master. The person who came was the Elder Master of the Li clan, Li Chuanbua. Li Chuanbua's face was solemn. He nodded and said, I heard your conversation just now. Deep exhaustion and sadness could be seen in his eyes. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he went straight to the point and said, I'm here to chase you away. Chase me away. Li Xiongtu was stunned. The clan leader had just mentioned a contingency plan and the Elder Master had actually stood up immediately and wanted to chase him away. What kind of logic was this? Li Chuanbua took a deep breath. With his hands behind his back, he said, If you head north from here, there are tens of thousands of miles of vast snowy plains. There are no signs of human habitation for hundreds of thousands of miles. There are only countless ferocious beasts and spirit beasts. You can train and fight along the way. If you don't die, you can also achieve great success in martial arts. After passing through the snowy plains, you'll reach the 3 Stars Divine Clan. Everything will depend on your luck. He took off the ring on his finger and tossed it lightly. The silver ring drew a parabola in the air and landed in Li Xiongtu's hand. Inside, I've prepared all the medicine, daily necessities, dry rations and clean water for you. There's even 10,000 liters of fine wine. Other than that, there are also many heavenly treasures, purple crystal cores and purple crystal jade essence. Li Chuanbua said, There are a few books inside that contain my cultivation experience over the past 10,000 years. You can use them for reference. Chapter 1375. Li Xiongtu felt dizzy at once. What did this mean? On the one hand, he was chasing him away into that barren land where he would be isolated and helpless. On the other hand, he was giving him countless pieces of information. In fact, it even included Li Chuanbua's life's work. This was equivalent to treating him as if he was the successor of his legacy. What exactly was going on? Li Chuanbua's eyes revealed a desolate bleakness. Li Xiongtu, leave. This is not your home. Li Xiongtu stood up slowly, his majestic back straightening slowly. He said word by word, Elder Master, please take back the ring. Xiongtu dares not accept it. Li Chuanbua stood with his back facing him, as if he had already guessed that Li Xiongtu would say this. He didn't say anything and just closed his eyes tiredly. Li Xiongtu said, Elder Master, I Li Xiongtu am only a junior. Firstly, I am not worthy of your special attention. Secondly, I Li Xiongtu am not someone who is afraid of death. He straightened his back, his gaze like lightning. Back then, my clan was wiped out in the battle at the Lake of Despair in the upper 3 heavens. All my relatives and family members were killed. But I have never thought of revenge. This is the martial world. Both parties fought under the most fair circumstances. We lost, so this is what we should do. We all died on the battlefield and not killed by schemes and plots. This is also the fate of my clan. I don't blame anyone. I don't hate my opponents either. Perhaps if we meet again in the future, I will definitely not show mercy if I can kill them. But that is not because I want revenge. I believe that you can understand this, Elder Master. Li Xiongtu said proudly, the grudges of the martial world are settled in the martial world. Li Chuanbua nodded slowly and said dispassionately, I completely understand. Li Xiongtu said, after that day I Li Xiongtu was left with nothing. I was brought into the upper 3 heavens but received the meticulous care of my clan. Furthermore, I enjoyed the best resources of the clan for cultivation. This kindness is as great as heaven and earth. I Li Xiongtu will never forget this kindness in my entire life. Li Chuanbua's face contorted. He heaved a long sigh. Kindness as great as heaven and earth? Would he never forget? When Li Chuanbua heard this, he suddenly felt an endless sense of sorrow and sorrow. An endless mockery. It wasn't because of Li Xiongtu's stupidity, but because of his own clan's shrewdness. Right now, the Li clan is in a life-and-death situation. The 8 great clans were coming. I Li Xiongtu have received great kindness from my clan. So, how can I abandon my clan at such a time? Li Xiongtu said vehemently, I'm not leaving. I want to stay and fight with my family. Li Chuanbua clasped his hands behind his back, only feeling a wave of sorrow and coldness in his heart. He shook his head and said, since you've made your decision, it's up to you. However, this old man will never take back what he has given away. Li Xiongtu was silent for a moment before he said, Ancestor, do you think so too? The Li clan's crisis is irreversible? Li Chuanbua finally turned around slowly. There was an incredibly complicated look in his eyes as he looked at Li Xiongtu and said solemnly, that's right. The Li clan has reached the end of its road. Li Xiongtu's entire body shook. He said, since that's the case, then wouldn't Ancestor be more confident in leading people to break out of the encirclement and rebuild the clan? The old Ancestor had a divine skill that could penetrate the heavens and penetrate the earth. He was almost invincible in this world. If you want to leave, even if the allied forces are full of experts, who can stop Ancestor's footsteps? Li Chuanbo stared at Li Xiongtu for a moment, the admiration in his eyes growing stronger and stronger. Finally he shook his head and smiled bitterly. With a wave of his hand, a stool appeared below him. He actually sat down slowly and said, since that's the case, I'll talk to you. With Li Chuanbo's cultivation, he didn't need to sit at all. He could stand for a year. However, he showed such friendliness. That was a way of showing that he completely approved of Li Xiongtu. However, Li Xiongtu was insensitive and didn't realize what Li Chuanbo's sitting meant at all. Behind him, Meng Huanhuan rolled her eyes helplessly, expressing a serious sense of helplessness towards her lover's dullness. It's already been 10,000 years since this old man founded the clan single-handedly. Li Chuanbo smiled and said, at my age and my level, do you think that I will still be like a stray dog, struggling to survive in the pugilistic world, struggling to survive in the cracks of the pugilistic world? This old man can no longer afford to lose that face. Li Chuanbo smiled lightly. This is one of the reasons. Li Xiongtu frowned. After thinking for a while, he finally understood. He said, Xiongtu understands how Ancestor feels. Li Chuanbo nodded and smiled. There's one more thing. This old man contributed greatly to the rise of the Li clan. However, for the Li clan to fall to its current state, this old man is equally unforgivable. Also, Li Chuanbo closed his eyes and exhaled softly. When the tribulation is born, the clan is destroyed. When the clan is sinned, the tribulation is eliminated. This is a reincarnation cycle. It's also the price to pay for the clan's tribulation. The tribulation established a peaceful world, and those who came after the tribulation disrupted the peaceful world. Then the new tribulation will destroy the old. This is the cycle of the heavenly Tao. Retribution is not pleasant. Even if I escape, I won't be able to escape this cycle. Since that's the case, why should I escape? All these years, the various sins of the Li clan can be said to have arisen because of me. If I don't face the tribulation, who will? If I don't face the tribulation, how can the tens of millions of vengeful souls that the Li clan has created in the netherworld rest in peace? I can only decay together with the clan. Because I am Li Chuanbo, the founder of the Li clan. Li Chuanbo smiled lightly. Only my death can erase all these traces. He shook his head. You don't understand these. At least, you can't comprehend them now. Li Xiongtu seemed to understand but not fully. He only felt as if he was in the clouds and could only nod his head in confusion. He indeed didn't understand. He only felt that it was very profound. You are not a member of the Li clan. Li Chuanbo patted Li Xiongtu on the shoulder. You're on your own. In the future, if there's even the slightest bit of heartache, please think of the me today. Li Xiongtu nodded as if he understood, wanting to say something. However, Li Chuanbo stopped him. Then Li Chuanbo smiled as if there was a deeper meaning behind it. In a flash he disappeared in front of Li Xiongtu. In the long night, only his long sigh was left. As if riding on the clouds, Li Chuanbo flew out of Li Xiongtu's small courtyard in a flash and soared several thousand feet into the air. Standing in the air with his hands behind his back, he looked at the land under his feet that he had devoted his life to and sighed deeply. He only felt a stuffy feeling in his chest and almost had the urge to cry. It was finally going to end. Moreover, the last effort that he had made. Obviously it had also failed. Li Xiongtu didn't leave. If he didn't leave, all of Li Chuanbo's thoughts would vanish into thin air. Li Chuanbo couldn't be sure if Li Xiongtu was tribulation. However, he could sense that there was a special characteristic on Li Xiongtu that was completely different from the Li clan. This special characteristic, whether it was in his speech, temperament or his daily actions, gave people the feeling that he and the Li clan were people from two different worlds. Especially today when Li Xiongtu refused to leave just like that. It made one's heart tremble even more. However, Li Chuanbo knew that such sentiments from Li Xiongtu definitely wouldn't affect Li Wubo, Li Ju, Li Badian and the rest at all. They would only think that Li Xiongtu was a fool. As for other things such as being touched, grateful, admiring or sympathizing with him, definitely not. Li Chuanbo was well aware of all of Li Wubo's plans. Even at the last moment of the Li clan, when Li Xiongtu, Li Ju and Li Badian escaped together, Li Xiongtu was definitely the one who was the most seriously injured, Moreover, Li Ju and Li Badian would definitely lay their hands on Li Xiongtu at a certain point in time. From there, all the truth would be revealed. By then, Li Xiongtu would definitely be bitterly disappointed. By then, the Li clan would truly be done for. If he left on his own now, perhaps in the future, on account of their current relationship, the Li clan would still have a chance to turn things around. However, if he didn't leave, he would truly push the Li clan into a bottomless abyss. By then, the Li clan's bloodline would be completely wiped out from the Heavenly Layer continent. Even if Li Xiongtu could survive in the end, he would definitely not admit that this Li of his had anything to do with the Li clan. The Li clan would be cut off from then on. However, Li Chuanbo had no other choice now. Although he knew the direction of everything, he could only watch helplessly as things progressed step by step according to the path that fate had arranged, until there was no hope of reprieve. Li Chuanbo didn't doubt that Li Xiongtu would be killed by Li Ju or Li Badian, because this was absolutely impossible. Tribulation wouldn't die. If Li Xiongtu was tribulation, then he definitely wouldn't die. Li Wubo's plan was just a huge joke. He was an idiot who sought his own death. If Li Xiongtu wasn't tribulation, then Li Xiongtu was also an outstanding hero in this world. During this period of time, Li Xiongtu's efforts and all the bizarre encounters from the upper three heavens to the upper three heavens all proved that Li Xiongtu wouldn't die so easily. Since the heavens had given Li Xiongtu so many opportunities, how would they let Li Xiongtu die so easily? Based on Li Chuanbo's experience of more than 10,000 years, no one who was especially favored by the heavens would die so easily. This was a law. Therefore, the Li clan could only suffer a tragedy, and not Li Xiongtu. Looking at the simple and unadorned ring on his hand, Li Xiongtu couldn't help but scratch his head. He asked, "Huan, why do you think it's so strange?" Meng Huan pursed her lips and smiled. She said gently, "Since the Elder Master has given it to you, just keep it. It's not a bad thing after all. However, the Elder Master has come alone to give it to you. This means that he doesn't want others to know about this. Therefore, it's best that you don't reveal it to others. It's good that you know about it." Li Xiongtu was enlightened at once. Yes. Thank you for your reminder." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. It was already late at night. However, on the main road, a few figures were flying at lightning speed. Towards the northwest. Chuyang, Mo Tianji, Gu Duxing, Gmo, Luo Kadi, Ao Shiyun and Xiadanxiong. Along the way, with the support of Chu Yang's huge resources, the few of them started to cultivate to their limits while hurrying on with their journey. All of their cultivations were improving rapidly. The familiar way and extreme pain brought back memories of the time when they went to the northern wastelands in the upper three heavens. Everyone felt a sense of warmth in their hearts. This trip to the northwest may be our first head-on clash with the big clans. Mo Chinji faced the northern wind that got colder as they went north. His eyes were full of calmness and depth. It's also my first confrontation with that Diwu Qingru. Chu Yang smiled slightly. How do you feel? Mo Chinji smiled calmly and said, "The upheaval of the world will truly begin in the northwest." That's right. Chu Yang chuckled. Looking at the dark night ahead, he said calmly, "The wind and clouds are rising and the sky is about to fall. I have a premonition that the day when I feel like I'm in heaven and death is about to come." Chapter 1376. Chu Yang frowned and said, "Tianji, what you said is correct. Diwu Qingro may have all of the weaknesses you mentioned. However, we are not Diwu Qingro after all. We did not grow up in that kind of environment. Perhaps it is not as simple as we think. Moreover, even if Diwu Qingro has these weaknesses, he has always suppressed them very well." Chu Yang said, "You must know that our battle with him is extremely trivial. It is absolutely impossible for every step to be a great battle that can lead to a dead end. In other words, the weaknesses you mention will not appear at all in Diwu Qingro's usual schemes." Of course. Mo Tianji looked at Chu Yang with some admiration and said, "I did not expect you to be able to think of this with your brain. I really have a whole new level of respect for you." Chu Yang's face was full of black lines. He threw a flying kick and said, "So I am a fool in your eyes?" Mo Tianji laughed and said, "I did not mean that. I meant that you like to do things in a straightforward manner. Even if it is through your hands, it is still so. Therefore, from a certain point of view, your scheme is not a scheme at all. It is an open scheme. You set up a formation and wait for others to break it. It is like this. You, me, and Diwu Qingro are three different kinds of people. Diwu Qingro used the inertia of a scheme to deal with your open scheme. Therefore he is at a disadvantage. The flames of war in the lower three heavens have already risen. The overall situation is chaotic. He cannot make any changes. Therefore you succeeded. However, if you give him time, I still believe that you will not be able to defeat him. Mo Tianji said with a smile. Chu Yang took a deep breath and looked up. He recalled the battles in the lower three heavens. He had to admit that Mo Tianji's words were reasonable. Those so-called schemes of his were almost no real schemes. Every one of them was clearly placed in front of the other party. This point, it was absolutely true. However, whether it is me or Diwu Qingro, we cannot use your kind of scheme. Mo Tianji smiled and said, because of that kind of scheme. Only a smart person with a one-track mind can use it. Therefore you compliment both of us. Therefore, I need you to compliment me. Chu Yang's face was full of black lines. He had an impulse to strangle Mo Tianji. A smart person to the end? What kind of smart person was that? You can just call me an idiot. There's one more thing. Mo Tianji stretched out a finger as he galloped. We're talking about Diwu Qingro's weakness. And not Diwu Qingro's strong points. You see, I haven't started to talk about his strong points yet. You need to fill me in on his strong points. In Mo Tianji's eyes, there was clearly a hint of mockery. Chu Yang snorted. He realized that he had been tricked. As for Diwu Qingru, he suddenly gained the favor of the Dharma Supreme from his status as a subordinate clan of the Zhuge clan. To him, this is equivalent to reaching the heavens in a single bound. Mo Tianji said, if the Diwu clan wants to rise, this is their only chance. It can also be said that the Dharma Supreme intentionally gave this opportunity to the Diwu clan. Then there is a problem here, Mo Tianji said. Why did the Dharma Supreme give this opportunity to Diwu Qingru? And not given to the other families? In fact, the Dharma Supreme himself could even lead this war. Sending a law enforcement officer with a lofty status would have allowed him to take all the glory for himself. However, the Dharma Supreme had given it to Diwu Qingru. What? Mo Tianji said, there is a question here that I will put aside for the time being. That is, what is the relationship between the Dharma Supreme and Diwu Qingru? Chu Yang frowned. I remember telling you before that the Dharma Supreme is a tribulation of the same generation as Diwu Qingrou's ancestor. He has specially taken care of the Diwu clan. Mo Tianji snorted and said, only someone like you, would believe such a statement. The Dharma Supreme and the Diwu clan's ancestor are of the same generation. Then his own grandson should also be. Then why didn't he support his own family back then? Instead, he watched his own family get destroyed but kept the Diwu clan alive? There is such a reason. You actually believed it? Mo Tianji was somewhat speechless. Although it doesn't hurt the big picture, I believe that there must be a reason for this. And this reason may not be important, but if it is, it can affect the overall situation. Chu Yang's back was full of sweat. He felt a little creeped out. He muttered, if I could only save one of the two clans back then. Mo Tianji stared at him and said, what would you do? Cold sweat seeped out of Chu Yang's forehead. He said with difficulty, I would bring the important figures of my brother's family back to my own family, to protect my own family. Chu Yang finally realized that he, who had always prided himself on being unparalleled in loyalty, was also absolutely selfish at this time. He absolutely couldn't abandon his biological parents and biological children to protect other clans. The only thing he could do was to try his best to protect the important people of other clans. However, the clan he chose in the end was still his own clan. You don't have to be ashamed. Mo Tianji said, if you don't even care about your own parents, wife and children, are you still human? Even if you protect the world, what's the use of that? Chu Yang nodded and said, that's right. But no matter what, human selfishness can't be avoided at any time. Mo Tianji nodded. Yes. If even you, the righteous tribulation sword master, can't be so noble, then, can that Dharma Supreme really do it? This is tantamount to a huge joke. That's why I didn't believe it at all. Mo Tianji said, in the story that you told me when the Dharma Supreme suddenly appointed Diwu Qingru as the commander-in-chief, I even suspected that the Dharma Supreme you spoke of was the one who had planned everything back then, Diwu Chouchang, and not some Lu Long. Chu Yang's expression changed. He suddenly stopped in his tracks, dumbfounded. On the other side, Mo Tianji, who was speeding, did the same. The master of calculation and manipulation was shocked by his own speculation. When he said it, Mo Tianji was just making a vague assumption. But the moment he said it, Mo Tianji felt as if his brain was struck by lightning. He was completely shaken by his own words. The night wind was chilly. The two stood in the wind, feeling as if they had fallen into an ice cave. They looked at each other and saw the deep coldness in each other's eyes. Both of them thought of that story at the same time. Told by the Dharma Supreme. Chu Yang eavesdropped and told Mo Tianji. Chu Yang didn't delete a single word. It was indeed so. At that time, Diwu Chouchang was the first to come up with the idea. And the Diwu clan was ranked 5th among the big clans. In other words, Diwu Chouchang was also ranked 5th among the tribulations. And at that time the big clans were established according to their rankings. Tribulations to nourish the heavens naturally had to be ranked according to their brothers' rankings. There were a total of 5 entrances. Then who was the 5th one? Diwu Chouchang. Only Diwu Chouchang. At this moment, Chu Yang and Mo Tianji didn't say anything. Although this was just a guess that Mo Tianji had blurted out, this guess was infinitely close to the truth. Both Chu Yang and Mo Tianji had this intuition. This time, it was an unintentional sentence. It revealed the truth. All of this was planned by Diwu Chouchang. Then he benefited, escaped, and finally, became the Dharma Supreme. And then, he controlled the world and fought against the Tribulation Sword Master. And the law enforcement officers were originally supposed to be the Tribulation Sword Master's helpers, but suddenly became his sworn enemy. This change. There was a real reason now. That was why the Dharma Supreme suddenly suggested that Diwu Qingru be the commander-in-chief. And that was, Diwu Chouchang and Diwu Qingru were the same. Their goal was to revitalize the Diwu clan. The night wind was chilly but the two's hearts were turbulent. If it was Diwu Chouchang then, this wasn't some righteous revenge but a complete and utter betrayal. And only this person. He was the one who really used everything the brothers had to gain benefits for himself. Mo Tianji took a deep breath and said, since the Dharma Supreme gave this opportunity to Diwu Qingru, then with Diwu's intelligence, he naturally realized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the Diwu clan. So he must seize it. Chu Yang also suppressed the turbulent waves in his heart. Like now wasn't the time to talk about Diwu Chouchang but Diwu Qingru. But although Diwu Qingru is in such a high position because of his foundation, he can't obtain the corresponding authority because he doesn't have any foundation. The disadvantages of reaching the heavens in one step are vividly displayed by Diwu Qingru at this moment. Mo Tianji said. Chu Yang nodded slowly. Yes, there were often people who used reaching the heavens in one step to describe the most eager and lucky guy. But they didn't know that reaching the heavens in one step wasn't actually a good thing. If a mortal reached the heavens in one step to the immortal realm, then he would end up being killed in the shortest time possible. If a person from the lowest level reached the apex of power in one step, such as becoming a prime minister or a general, then he would also end up being ostracized and killed immediately, because he didn't have the experience of such a high position at all. And for those who were in such a high position, which one of them was easy to get along with, they would never give him the chance and time to learn. Now, Mo Tianji's use of reaching the heavens in one step to describe Diwu Qingru's current situation was very appropriate. Indeed, Diwu Qingru should be in such an awkward situation now. Diwu Qingru's only advantage is that he has the Dharma Supreme behind him. Mo Tianji said, if not for the Dharma Supreme's personal nomination, even if Diwu Qingru has great wisdom, we wouldn't even have to do anything. He would have become a pile of bones long ago. Chu Yang nodded slowly. Mo Tianji's words made a lot of sense. What the two of them didn't know was that what Mo Tianji said now was as if he had seen it with his own eyes. All of this was Diwu Qingru's real experience. And in fact, it was just as Mo Tianji said. If not for the Dharma Supreme's nomination, Diwu Qingru, this commander-in-chief who came out of nowhere, would have become a pile of bones and vengeful spirits at this moment even if he had 100,000 lives. Chapter 1377. On the other hand, it was also because of the Dharma Supreme's strong nomination that Diwu Qingru was collectively rejected. Therefore, the nomination of the Dharma Supreme can only serve as a protective talisman here. Therefore, the higher-ups of the big clans and law enforcement officers are not convinced by Diwu Qingru. In fact, they even look down on. Mo Tianji said in a heavy voice, therefore the allied forces appear to be very powerful. But they are still in a state of disunity if you look at them separately. And this aspect was fatal for Diwu Qingru. He needs time, a lot of time. It won't be difficult for Diwu Qingru to reverse the situation and establish his prestige. With his wisdom, he will be able to do it as long as he is given enough time. However, if he wants to build up the power of the Diwu clan in this battle, it will take a longer time. Chu Yang pondered and said, indeed. With Diwu Qingrou's ability, it wouldn't take a lot of brain power for him to change everyone's opinion in such a complicated situation. As long as he was given a bit of time, he would be able to do it with his superior intelligence. If he wanted to turn these forces that had been brainwashed by the big families into his own, it would be an extremely difficult task. Mo Qinji said, therefore this time, the existence of the Li clan is an opportunity for Diwu Qingrou. Diwu Qingrou will definitely not let the Li clan be destroyed too early. He needs the Li family to continue existing. Only then can he gradually show his edge on this excellent whetstone, conquer everyone's hearts, build his own strength, and plan the grand blueprint of the fifth family. After that, he is willing to destroy the Li family. Chu Yang suddenly understood. So this was Mo Tianji's real plan. So this time I'm a little conflicted. Mo Qinji frowned and said, the 8 super clans have mobilized too many forces in this encirclement. This is a great opportunity for us to figure out the actual situation of the enemy and see Diwu Qingrou clearly. However, if we delay for too long and Diwu Qingrou's power takes shape, it will be a disaster for us. If it wasn't long, you won't be able to see anything and you won't be able to gain anything either. Chu Yang interrupted. So, we have to set a relatively safe time period for us. If we exceed it, we have to ignite the conflict and then trigger a decisive battle. Let them fight to the death? Yes. Mo Tianji said, this is the only way. But how to grasp this point is very difficult to say, and sometimes, even if it has reached this point, it's not something we can fight just because we want to. Mo Qinji said, that's why I insisted. We have to get there. If we don't go, then, under the influence of the Dharma Supreme, we will not be able to do anything. Then Diwu Qingrou's strength will truly take shape on a large scale. Chu Yang nodded. He understood what Mo Tianji meant. If the big clans fight for themselves, then they won't be afraid. A tiger that had been separated. It was definitely not as scary as a pack of wild wolves. But if the big clans really formed a rope with a peerless commander like Diwu Qingrou as the core, then what awaited Chu Yang and Brother Jia was absolutely a disaster. An unimaginable disaster. Night wind. Mo Tianji sighed helplessly. It's a pity that the Dharma Supreme took action too early this time. If he used Diwu Qingrou as the commander-in-chief and delayed it for 1 or 2 years to let our strength grow, then I would have 100,000 ways. I would have a 10,000% chance of destroying the big clans, Diwu Qingrou and the law enforcement officers while they're not on good terms with each other. I even have the confidence to divide the power of the big clans into 10 parts again and easily nibble away. It's just a small trick. But now, faced with such a heaven-sent opportunity, our strength is not enough. Mo Tianji sighed deeply again. It's such a pity. It's indeed such a pity. Chu Yang also sighed. What Diwu Qingrou was facing now, and the big movements of the big clans, law enforcement officers and blood payers, plus the situation of the Li clan, was indeed a great opportunity. It was just a pity. They took action too early. Mo Tianji sighed and glared at Chu Yang with some dissatisfaction. It's all your fault. You're not the type to play tricks. Why did you blindly interfere? I spent so much effort to create a Li clan and wanted to detonate it at the right time. But you're already setting off fireworks before the new year. Minister Chu immediately felt that he was in the wrong and instantly lowered his head. Because this situation seemed to be created by Sword Master Chu, Chu Yang was speechless. When he proposed this idea, Wan Renjia and the others were all full of praise. They praised him for being a natural schemer. But now, it seemed that he had completely ruined Mo Tianji's plan. His proud work in Mo Tianji's eyes was actually blindly interfering, and the Dharma Supreme and Diwu Qingrou were obviously good at seizing any opportunity. Once such a thing happened, how would they give Brother Jia time to grow if the two big think tanks unintentionally worked together? The Dharma Supreme did it without any hesitation, and Diwu Qingrou's acceptance was similarly resolute and decisive. Minister Chu smiled dryly and said, "Brother-in-law? We're in a hurry. Well, the night is deep and the road ahead is vast. The stars are shining, the sun is shining brightly, and the flowers are fragrant." Mo Tianji rolled his eyes and sighed helplessly. Now that things had come to this, they could only take one step at a time. Just as they were about to move, the two of them suddenly felt a light before their eyes, as if something had happened. The two of them couldn't help but turn their heads. Ahead, the exclamations of Gu Duxing and the others could be heard. Looking at the sky, all of them were dumbfounded and speechless. Far away in the east, an incomparably magnificent and spectacular phenomenon appeared. A beam of red light shot up into the sky. The red light was dazzling and went straight up into the heavens. It was as if the sky, which was still under the night sky, had been split open. If not for the fact that this beam of red light was rising in a straight line and not spreading out in all directions, the brothers would almost think that the sun had come out in advance. Then, there was a crisp sound that shook the heavens. This clear cry was extremely clear, resounding and resounding. It didn't seem to be very loud, but the winds and clouds of the whole world moved along with this sound. The clouds that were illuminated by the stars in the sky were turned into colorful clouds by this beam of red light at the same time. Like pieces of colorful cotton wool, they quickly scattered in all directions. Then even more colorful clouds gathered from all directions, desperately gathering toward the place where the red light shone. The sky at that place instantly turned into a rainbow of colors. The sound of wings flapping could be heard in the air. Countless birds of all shapes and sizes flew toward the place where the red light was at with all their might. A moment ago they could only see birds flying toward them from afar. The next moment they had already flown far away over their heads and left. This kind of speed was something that even flying birds had never achieved before. One could imagine what kind of irreparable damage these birds' bodies would suffer after experiencing such a flight that exceeded their limits. But these birds didn't care at all. In fact, they were very excited, as if they had encountered a huge ceremony that was hard to come by in 10,000 years, or as if there was a huge opportunity ahead of them that was hard to come by in 1,000 years. As long as they rushed there in time, they would be able to go all out with all their might as if they had been reborn. The dense mist between heaven and earth seemed to be filled with a kind of obscure and powerful energy, a phenomenon of heaven and earth. This is really strange. Mo Tianji was a little puzzled. Looking at the birds flapping their wings and flying in all directions, he clicked his tongue in wonder. Normally, such a phenomenon of heaven and earth would only appear when the Tribulation Sword Master obtained the Tribulation Sword. But this time Chu Yang was clearly beside him. He didn't obtain any fragments of the Tribulation Sword, nor did he do anything earth-shattering. Then what was this phenomenon of heaven and earth in the east? Could it be that a treasure of heaven and earth had appeared? The brothers discussed spiritedly. Chu Yang's expression became very ugly. Others didn't know, but he knew very well. This was the authentic nirvana of the phoenix. The location was in the southeast direction again. In other words, Rui Butong had undergone another nirvana transformation. And this kind of nirvana transformation was different from resurrection. It was a qualitative change of the phoenix race. Every change was an evolution, an absolute increase in strength. But, if it wasn't for an extremely strong and shocking stimulus, this would never happen. Then what kind of situation could stimulate Rui Butong to this extent? Chu Yang's heart thumped wildly, almost jumping out of his chest. His mouth was dry and his heart was burning with worry. What had happened? Mo Tianji unintentionally turned his head and saw Chu Yang's deathly pale face. He couldn't help but be shocked. Suddenly he was shocked. Could this be Butong's phoenix bloodline? Chu Yang nodded slowly. Definitely, it is. He immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Mo Tianji realized the seriousness of the situation. He raised his head again and looked in the direction of the red light. Mo Tianji frowned. It's too far. The red light is probably thousands of miles away from here. If we go over, we have to go over even if we can't. We have to go over even if we don't have enough time. Chu Yang said resolutely. Throw away all the weights on you and go with all your might. Let's go and take a look first. Okay. Gu Duxing and the others heard the conversation between the two. Their brows were filled with endless anxiety in an instant. Dong Wushang wasn't the only one with Rui Butong. Mo Qingwu, Mo Lei, and Chu Yang's clan were also there. Every one of them was very important. Chu Yang took the lead. His black figure rose and instantly turned into a shooting star. The brothers followed closely behind, turning into a sharp arrow. They cut through the darkness and shot toward the southeast at the fastest speed possible. Everyone was burning with anxiety. They couldn't wait to get there in one step. Brother, what on earth happened to you? The northwest trip was immediately shelved when everything was ready. There wasn't even the slightest bit of hesitation. Chapter 1378. Upper Three Heavens, Southeast, Flat Mountain Ridge. Chu Clan. Back to a few months ago. Dong Wushang, Rui Budong and the rest had been practicing diligently. Ever since they escorted Han Xiaoran and the rest back to the Chu Clan, their passion for practicing increased day by day. After this adventure outside, both of them realized one thing: there were so many heavenly layer experts and their current cultivation was nothing. So these two brothers fully displayed the spirit of fighting for their lives. Every day they would find a spacious place to fight. Emole and Emo Qingwu fought against each other. Occasionally, both of them would exchange blows with Dong Wuxiang and Rui Badong. Rui Badong turned into an indomitable cockroach. Every day he was beaten to death by Dong Wuxiang, but every day he would provoke him recklessly. Occasionally, when both of them had a new understanding, they would work together to challenge Yu Lingxue. Every time Yu Lingxue would beat them up mercilessly. There were fewer and fewer external forces in Flat Mountain Ridge, and it was getting more and more peaceful. Here too many people had died. Not everyone in the martial world was unafraid of death. Emole had been accompanying Emo Qingwu. However, during this period of time, Emole discovered a strange phenomenon. That was, Emo Qingwu's personality seemed to be changing day by day. Emo Qingwu was very strange during this period of time. She was a young girl who was close to 14 years old. Her figure was gradually growing. She was tall and slender, like a willow swaying in the wind. Gradually she began to emit the kind of peerless beauty that belonged to the world. Although they were both women, Emole sometimes looked at Emo Qingwu's eyes with some enchantment. Emole herself was a beauty. Before this, she didn't think that there was any woman in this world who could receive her praise, or be convinced. But now, facing the budding Emo Qingwu's charm, she sincerely felt ashamed of her inferiority. So, Emole paid more and more attention to Emo Qingwu. She wanted to find out which part of Emo Qingwu was better than her. The more she felt inferior, the more she looked, the more she admired. The current Emo Qingwu could be said to be perfect. That kind of immaturity seemed to be gradually fading away. What replaced it was not the gentleness of a young girl, but a kind of spiritual aura that was threatening. It gave people a kind of feeling that this kind of girl should not exist in the mortal world. She should be in the sky, singing and dancing. From the bone. From his soul, every movement, every frown and every smile, the quiet elegance he exuded was enough to make anyone, regardless of whether they were men or women. When he first saw her, it was a sense of inferiority. Emo Qingwu's change was not only in this aspect. In his attitude towards people, there were also some changes. Originally, when she saw Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolin, she would pester them, especially Yang Ruolin. Emo Qingwu's mouth was sweet as she circled around Yang Ruolin. She was afraid that her future mother-in-law wouldn't like her future daughter-in-law, but now, when she saw Yang Ruolin, Emo Qingwu became bashful. She blushed and wanted to escape. Yang Ruolin couldn't help but laugh at Emo Qingwu's change. She said, "Little girl, you've grown up. You actually know how to be shy." However, Emo could faintly feel that it wasn't that simple. Moreover, Emo Qingwu was becoming more and more taciturn. Some of his habitual movements had also unknowingly changed. She was forced to do so. In the past, when she was deep in thought, she liked to use this posture, squatting on the stone steps, holding her cheeks with both hands, her eyes frozen. But now, she would place one hand on her thigh and the other hand gently supporting her temples. Her eyelids drooped and her gaze was on the ground. In the past, when she was happy or when she encountered something funny, she would open her mouth and laugh without any scruples. But now, the corners of her mouth curved, revealing a smile. But even if it was a smile from the bottom of her heart in Emole's eyes, it had an almost gentle and melancholic taste. What exactly was going on? Perhaps only Emo Qingwu herself knew such a change. The little girl was also very confused. She also had a feeling of not being able to adapt to her own changes. Emo Qingwu didn't know when it started, but she started to have a strange dream repeatedly. She was very scared and very puzzled. Why would I have such a dream? And each time it was more realistic than the previous, more comprehensive than the previous, and closer than the previous. Until the most recent one, which made Emo Qingwu feel scared. In the dream she grew up bit by bit and then got injured and then her talent was destroyed and then the clan was indifferent, and then she was bullied. Even when she was destroyed, the second brother who loved her the most happened to be going on a long trip. She looked at him with tears in her eyes, hoping that her second brother could help her and give her a hand. But her second brother sighed and turned his head away. At that time her whole body was cold. Emo Qingwu clearly remembered that she was born in the same person as in the dream. The only difference was that Chu Yang wasn't in the dream at this time, but in real life she was holding the dreaming of a gentle dance saber, and the clan had also snatched her saber. Of course, the reality was the same as the dream. When her second brother was faced with her cry for help, He also sighed and turned his head away, or maybe it was because of this that I was very dissatisfied with second brother and very disappointed. Mo Qingwu said to herself. Then, when she finally grew up, it was a few years full of darkness. Suddenly, a clan proposed to the Mo clan. They wanted to marry her. And that person was someone she hated to the extreme, and was a well-known playboy. How could Mo Qingwu be willing to marry such a person? So, Mo Qingwu chose to ask her second brother for help. At that time her second brother was in the Zhonglan battlefront. After her letter was sent out, there was no reply. Then, the woman who had been following her second brother came back. She told her, "Give up, second master is very busy, how can he have time to care about your matters?" That woman, in reality in this life, was eldest brother's woman. She was sent to second brother's side, but she was controlled by second brother. But in the dream, the news she brought made her all disheartened. From then on, she didn't miss her clan at all. Her mother was also begging her to marry him. So, Mo Qingwu was completely disheartened. She chose to escape. At that time, she chose to escape from the clan in the dream, and found a place not far away to hide. She thought, if the clan is anxious, if father is sad and upset, then she would rather suffer and get allies for the clan and just marry over. But no. Father wasn't anxious. After she went missing, he just did a hasty search. 2 days later, he told the clan that she was missing, and then chose another woman from the clan to marry over. From then on, he didn't care about her at all. From then on, she was completely disappointed in the clan. So, from then on, she wandered the world. Finally, one day she wandered the world. In a purple bamboo forest. She found a lonely swordsman. His name was Chu Yang. This lonely swordsman. He had the same name as brother Chu Yang in this life. In the dream, Mo Qingwu even had such a feeling. And they looked the same too, both of them were lonely people. They were like two lone wolves who had been alone in the desert for a generation. Now they had finally met. Mo Qingwu suddenly had a feeling of empathy. Every time she saw this lonely person, she seemed to have a kind of comfort in her heart. So, she felt more and more that this person was very pitiful and wanted to comfort him. Then, after the two of them separated, she still missed him from time to time. Is he as helpless as me now? Finally, once again, when she went to the purple bamboo forest that she liked the most, she met him again. At that time he seemed to be missing something very fragile. So she comforted him casually. But, when he looked up at that time, the despair and a little bit of tenderness in his eyes struck her heart like lightning. She told him her name. The two of them became familiar with each other. Then, perhaps because she wanted to comfort him or because of some other reason, she said, "Don't be sad. Why don't I dance for you? My mother said that a daughter should never dance for the rest of her life. Be careful that one dance will be bitter for the rest of your life." But at that time she wanted to dance for him. Even if one dance would be bitter for the rest of her life, the moment her red dress fluttered, she clearly saw the appreciation, tenderness and a kind of doting in this person's eyes. It was this kind of doting that conquered her in that instant. This person was a swordsman. He believed in a heartless swordsman. He couldn't reach the peak of love. So right from the start she said, "I can't hurt you. I just want to practice the sword. Please leave." But she was very persistent. "Even if you don't want me, I am willing to use my loneliness to warm your loneliness." So she said, "I'm willing to let you use me to practice the sword. Even if you crush my love. If you can get the essence of the sword that you want from me, I'm willing." When two lonely people were together, they were no longer lonely. "I'm giving, not for you to accept me or to hurt me. I just want to give for you. I'm also willing to be hurt by you." So, step by step they were entangled, separated and reunited again and again. That heartless person took up all the space in her heart step by step. However, he still couldn't forget the fact that he had to avenge his master, his junior brother, and his sect. He was burdened with a monstrous blood feud. He could even feel that the bitterness in his heart was so thick that it could melt into juice at any given moment. She had a feeling that if he continued to torture himself like this, sooner or later, he would collapse. He hugged his sword when he slept. Every day when he had nothing to do, his eyes would look at his sword with such concentration. His sword was all his hope. His hope for revenge. She was very curious. Could it be that to a man, a cold sword was actually more beautiful than a beautiful woman? Am I more beautiful? Or is the sword more beautiful? He often woke up from his dreams and shouted, "I'm going to kill all of you." Every time that happened, she would use her arms to hug him tightly until he calmed down. Every time that happened, her heart would ache so much that she would cry. For this man? Today was the birthday of Lone Wolf in the Forest, Alliance Master. Alliance Master Lone Wolf had been supporting him since the opening of the book. He had never left and had taken great credit for himself. Here I wish Alliance Master Lone Wolf a happy birthday. Every year there will be a day like this. For my brother, I'm asking for birthday greetings from everyone. Thank you. G. Chapter 1379. Then, after giving up all her feelings, Jianghu realized that what she wanted was not just simple giving. A woman needed someone to rely on in her life. And this person had already become her reliance. But that lonely swordsman still chose to leave heartlessly. He wanted to break through the merciless barrier of the sword path and turn himself into a cold sword to avenge his master and junior. She begged him, but he left in the end, years of separation and reunions, years of mutual harm, years of... Finally, after he rejected her, she left with a broken heart. She met with an ambush on the way. He rushed over with all his might, but she had no strength left. But who would know how satisfied she felt when she laid in his arms and saw him crying anxiously? But she still had regrets in her heart. Was she more important or was the sword more important? Was she prettier or was the sword prettier? The pride in her bones did not allow her to bow down to a sword. So she struggled and said to him, "I am prettier than the sword." This sentence was originally to ask, "Chu Yang, am I prettier than the sword?" But when I saw him nod his head vigorously with tears in his eyes, I was satisfied. I did not say the last word. Jianghu sat on the stone steps and recalled her dream. Her delicate face was full of confusion. I have had this dream countless times. What? If someone knew about Jianghu's dream and looked at Jianghu's expression now, they would realize that the current Jianghu was exactly the same as herself in her dream, that kind of gentle expression of waiting, again and again, night after night. Jianghu woke up from her dreams with a start. At first, it was just intermittent fragments. But in recent days, this experience would be repeated in her dream almost every 3 to 5 nights. It was a complete repetition. Jianghu was really scared. What was going on? Why was it that her dream and reality were clearly the same person, but their experiences were so different? Why was it that the Chu Yang in her dream and reality were clearly the same person, but whether it was temperament or everything else, they were completely different? This was a dream. Then why was it the same every time she had the same dream? If this was not a dream, then some things and periods of time were already in the past. And she was not in the third heaven now. Those were clearly impossible to happen again. What? Jianghu was terrified. At a time like this, she longed for Chu Yang to be by her side and explain this bizarre matter to her. But Chu Yang wasn't here. So, Jianghu couldn't tell anyone about this. Therefore she kept it in her heart and endured it all by herself. Moreover, Jianghu discovered something to her surprise. His mood was gradually changing. Some of his habitual movements had also changed under the influence of the dream. It was the kind of thing that became a dream. Finally, on that day, Jianghu suddenly felt a boom sound. An inexplicable message suddenly surged into her mind. At that time she was eating, but she was suddenly stunned. Then she screamed. He fainted. Then, everyone seemed to have received a clear message. The heavens passage had opened. The Calamity Sword Master had obtained the Calamity Sword fragment. However, in the Chu clan, other than a limited number of people, no one took this matter to heart. Instead, Jianghu suddenly fainted. This was a major event. No one knew that Chu Yang was in the Pagoda Mountain when Jianghu was unconscious. The moment he picked up the section of the Calamity Sword with one hand. On the other side, Chu Yang had obtained section 1. On the other side, Jianghu suddenly fainted. There was not the slightest difference. Yang Rulan instantly panicked. During this period of time, Jianghu's obedience, cuteness, cleverness had already won Yang Rulan's favor. Yang Ruolan was a little young, but she was a lowly who was deeply in love with her son. She was a peerless beauty who had made a solemn vow to marry her son. Yang Ruolan couldn't find fault with her even if she wanted to. She really doted on Jianghu to the core. At this moment, seeing Jianghu suddenly faint, she instantly felt a sharp pain in her heart. She hurriedly caught her and held her in her arms. Then she started to issue a series of orders. Get the doctor, get the doctor, get the Moon Breeze elders here too. I'd better go personally. Then she carried Jianghu and ran all the way to Yulingxue and Feng Yuro's residence. But the Moon Breeze elders couldn't figure out why Jianghu suddenly fainted either. All the doctors were at their wits' end. Everything was normal, but he was still unconscious. What was going on? Not more than 15 minutes later, Mo Qingwu woke up. She suddenly felt that there seemed to be something extra in her heart. But what exactly was it? She couldn't grasp it at the moment and didn't dare to believe it either. It was just that, after waking up, there was a desire in her heart that burned uncontrollably like a raging fire. Chuyang, I want to see you. Now. Immediately. Immediately. It was so urgent that the longing was about to crush her little heart, to the point where it was unbearably sour. Mo Qingwu had the idea of leaving this place looking for Chuyang, seeing him, asking him, then Unlike Mo Qingwu, Dong Wuxiang and Rui Badong clearly knew that once the heavens opened, their brothers would come up. They also wanted to leave this place. Once again out of the southeast. This time it was different from before. This time they were really fighting side by side with their brothers. This was the real way to dominate the world. Dong Wuxiang and Rui Badong had improved very quickly during this period of time. Both of them had entered the peak of second-grade Supreme Martial Artist level and were only one step away from third-grade Supreme Martial Artist. In Yu Lingshue's view, Dong Wuxiang's speed was crazy and rapid improvement. As for Rui Badong, in Feng Yuro's words, it was incomprehensible improvement. Dong Wuxiang was a powerful saber supremacy. The path was completely opened and he was improving day by day. This could be understood very well. Rui Badong, on the other hand, was puzzling. Rui Badong didn't seem to have good aptitude, but his cultivation speed was completely on par with the genius Dong Wuxiang. This was what was strange about the Moon Breeze couple. Neither of them knew that during this period of time, Rui Badong's phoenix bloodline, as he cultivated like his life depended on it, it was surging fiercely. In the face of Dong Wuxiang's terrifying cultivation speed, the pride of the phoenix bloodline was aroused. On the contrary, it was Feng Yuro and Yu Lingxue who stopped cultivating during this period of time. Their realms didn't move, didn't increase or decrease. Dong Wuxiang and the rest couldn't understand the two legendary supreme martial artists' idleness. At this point they were already regressing. Why did the Moon Breeze couple suddenly stop improving? But they didn't understand. Feng Yuro and Yu Lingshue's desire for a child of their own bloodline. Especially after knowing that Chuyang was the Tribulation Sword Master, this desire grew bigger and bigger. Because Chuyang had promised. And the promise of the Tribulation Sword Master could definitely be fulfilled. So, the two of them were full of joy and just waited. And the Moon Breeze couple knew that they were already infinitely close to the critical point of breaking through the void. If their child was born after going to the Heaven Imperial Court, the couple really didn't have the confidence to be safe in that environment. On the contrary here, they could sit back and relax. For the child's safety, the couple stopped cultivating without any discussion at all. To the couple, for the sake of having a child of their own, for the sake of their child's safety, even if the couple's cultivation fell to its original level, they had no regrets. When Dong Wuxiang and Rui Badong proposed to leave the southeast, the Moon Breeze couple expressed their absolute understanding. But Mo Qingwu's insistence on accompanying them was somewhat incomprehensible to everyone. And after Mo Qingwu fell into a coma, there was also another strange thing that happened. Mo Qingwu's cultivation had actually miraculously increased by several levels because of this coma. From the peak of 5th grade Martial Saint level, she rocketed to the peak of 2nd grade Martial Saint level. This was something that had never happened before in the history of the heaven. And Mo Qingwu herself was still in a daze. Faced with such a miraculous improvement, everyone in the Chu clan was dumbfounded. Even the Moon Breeze couple was dumbfounded. Even if there were some signs, it wouldn't be so strange. But this was the truth. 5th grade Martial Saint level when she fell into a coma. Then she woke up. 2nd grade Martial Saint level. It was as if he had been cultivating alone for several decades while Mo Qingwu was in a coma. Everyone almost fainted. Some were even considering if they should think of a way to faint like this once too. Faint once. She could increase by 4 levels of Martial Saint level. This was definitely not a loss. After the Moon Breeze couple discussed with Yang Rulin and the rest, they finally agreed to Mo Qingwu's request. They had no choice but to agree. These little girls had an expression that said, "If you don't agree, I'll sneak away." And at such a young age, they didn't know where such a deep yearning came from. The yearning in their eyes almost overflowed the entire flat mountain ridge. Faced with such a situation, Yang Rulin couldn't help but sigh. Her son Chuyang was indeed a weirdo. To be able to make such a young girl so infatuated, what a talent. In order to take care of her and to be her companion, Mo agreed to accompany them. And so, Dong Wuxiang Rui Badong Mo Lei and Mo Qingwu stepped out of the Chu clan on the second day after the heaven passage opened. The only thing different about this trip was Mo Qingwu. Mo Qingwu was dressed in red, like the most dazzling sunset. Even her waist was tied with a red cloth. Mo Qingwu had always liked the color red, but she had never liked it as thoroughly as this time. There was a pair of red cloud steel butterfly hairpins on her head, as if they were about to spread their wings and fly. The scabbard on her waist had also turned red. That dreaming of a gentle dance saber, which was definitely the number one in the heaven, hung obediently on her waist. The delicate scabbard hung on this slender waist, as if it could break her waist in half. When Mo Qingwu stepped out of the gate of the Chu clan, everyone was stunned for a moment. They were all amazed. Then, everyone had a clear feeling that the current Mo Qingwu seemed to be different. The four of them rode out, whipping their horses and galloping out. Mo Lei seemed to have heard Mo Qingwu mumbling something to herself. Her voice was extremely low. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.